evening, everyone, and welcome to the Board of Selectmen meeting for June 5th, 2019. If there's anyone filming or recording other than WACA-TV, would they just let us know? And I think I could take it that Channel 5 is actually recording, so okay, thank you. All right, right on time. Mark, would you mind leading us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Mark. All right, so vision statement. Joe, you want to read the vision statement? This is customary before each
I would be happy
meeting.
to, Mr. Chair.
Sure.
Thank you. Wow, is that, everybody can hear me back there without any reverb, right? It's a little loud back up here. I know I could. The Town of Ashland will be a prosperous and physically sound community with a full range of housing, business, cultural, educational, and recreational opportunities in a safe and attractive environment for residents and for visitors.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Brandy, would you mind reading the mission statement?
Sure. Pull your, there you go. A little bit closer. Is that better?
Yeah. There you go.
There we go. Okay. The Ashland Board of Selectmen is dedicated to promoting responsible fiscal management, advocating for sustainable development and growth, and providing excellent municipal services which will enhance the quality of life in our diverse community. The Ashland Board of Selectmen is committed to providing clear goals and objectives for town management and creating effective engagement and public participation with residents, state legislators, and other elected officials in order to achieve our mission.
Thank you. This is an unusual meeting of the board. It's a board reorg time, but and we had moved citizens' participation to behind that. But I'm seeing as how there's a number of people here. I think, are there people here to talk about the excise tax situation? Could you just raise your hand? So we have a few. Well, I'll move citizens' participation up just so we can get that done or listen to you first off. So I'm going to just move that up front as one of my last acts as chair. So is there someone who wants to address us on that issue? You could, if there's multiple people, you just line up behind the podium. So if you want to go ahead, come ahead.
On the excise tax?
I'd prefer to start, but you can go after them, Karen, if you'd like. Please just identify yourself as you come up to the microphone.
My name is Yeager. I'm here, as you know, about the excise tax issue. So basically what happened was I received on May 29th a bill for my excise tax, both from my car and my husband's. And we noticed there was a $30 demand fee on it, which we were actually very surprised about because we had never received the first bill. So, I just wanted to bring that up. I know there are several other people who have had this issue. I had reached out on the Ashland Bulletin to see if this was just me or if anybody else had the issue, and about 25 people had also said they had an issue with not receiving their bill. I know when I talked to the treasurer's office, they had said that once the fee is on there, it's state law and it can't be removed. But I just wanted to bring that to you all because I think it's an issue. When there's so many people that haven't received their bills, it sounds like there's an issue somewhere.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
So my suggestion is we listen to everybody and then respond.
Mhm.
Okay, go ahead.
So similar story, I'm Carl Reese, I live on Myrtle Street, and my neighbor brought it to my attention on Saturday after I received the bill on Thursday. Just came up in conversation that he had gotten a demand bill, and he said you should check your bill. So I did, and sure enough it said demand bill. And similar situation, I did call and speak to Cynthia, who's always pleasant and delightful, but she informed me that the selectmen had voted in 2009 to change the $15 fee to $30, which subsequently makes it illegal, state law, to refund anything over $15. Now again, I don't know the truth behind that or any of the red tape involved in that, but that's what she said. She also said that it is state law that it is our responsibility to seek the excise tax, which got a pretty raucous laughter from me, rather than rely on a bill to remind us that it's time to pay an amount that varies every year. It also seems kind of crazy to me to expect me to know to pay in February and March when I could have registered the car in August and it wouldn't necessarily come up at the same time. So there's a variety of things I'm being told that I'm sure Cynthia's been told and is of the belief, and certainly she's always been delightful, but I'm being billed $30 for something that I've never received a bill for, and I think that we need to figure out a way around that. If you want to apply it to next year, I'm okay with that. Most people might not be, but I think that might be a solution. Also, whatever solution you guys can creatively come up with would be okay, but something is definitely wrong. My understanding was there was more like 300 people, but that could be overstated, I'm not sure. But that's what I believe. So, thank you.
Good, thank you.
Thank you.
Leslie Glickman, the same thing. I have 2 cars, just got the bill. I didn't even notice it was a demand, truthfully, because I was leaving the next day till I saw it on Facebook. But when I called the treasurer's office, I don't remember her name, she told me to take it up with the post office. Now that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard, take it up with the post office, because she said it was mailed. And then when I went down yesterday, spoke to the treasurer, she said to me, well, if you'd paid your bill, I said if I had gotten the bill, I would have paid my bill, and then I wouldn't have this $30 on me. So I think their answers were kind of foolish, truthfully, and I don't really know what you can do about it, but I don't really think we should be responsible. But she told me if I don't pay, that eventually I'll be arrested. So, that's my story.
Yeah,
Thank you.
okay.
Lose your license.
Is there, well, while Mike's collecting his thoughts, does anybody else want to comment or?
I've been victimized myself a year and a half ago. So it's just not you folks. It's
Yeah.
people that are sitting on this board that have had the same thing happen.
And I would agree absolutely with you. I have no idea when to expect
Mhm.
the excise bill, so if the same thing obviously would happen, I don't, but I think, and we'll let the town manager address it, because I know he's done some research, but I'm intrigued with the whole idea that the board back in 2009 voted to raise that, so.
Were you on the board then? That's what I'm.
I'm old enough to have been, but I
That's right.
wasn't. I thought you were on the board.
Yeah, I
But
know.
I think that might be an option to pursue if that's something that in fact happened and it's in our domain to do so.
But I would also like to add, when you were told to go to the post office, that is not as silly as it seems. Because in my house, and I live on a major street, within the last 3 months, the amount of mail that I've received that is not my mail is unbelievable. And not just because the number is wrong. We got mail from Hopkinton, we got mail from across town. So I'm not saying that that's,
Right.
well, what I'm saying is, if the post office didn't get it to your address because it got delivered incorrectly someplace else, and someone didn't decide to forward it on, is a possibility.
Yeah, well, let's
Just
talk
possibility.
about that.
Michael?
Okay, Michael,
Sure. Yeah, so, I mean, first I want to thank Katie and those of you that have come to speak. You've been very polite, and I really appreciate that. Something like this usually brings out the worst in people, including maybe sometimes on our end as well, and I don't think that's necessarily the case. Katie did reach out to me and expressed her concern about this, and so I did some research. What happens is, when we get the information from the RMV, goes to the treasurer's office, who sends it out to our mailing agent and our collector. And they sent out about 16,000 bills as part of the first commitment. They certified, affidavit that says they sent it out. And that doesn't necessarily mean that you received it. It means that we mailed it. Now, I've known Ed and Leslie for a few years now. I know they're not just making it up. But from our perspective, we sent the mailing out. And then I wanted to go back and see if there was anything different this year compared to previous years, because there is information you know, on Facebook, there's a number of people, I guess, who have said that they have this issue. We didn't have anything different this year than previous years, so we sent out 16,000 bills, roughly. We sent out 1,934 demands back in late May. That comes out to about 12%, and that's consistent with previous years, almost right on the money. It's been 12%. And then the 1,934, it doesn't mean that, it just means that people didn't pay. It doesn't mean that they didn't receive the bill. There could be a variety of reasons. I'm sure Joe just didn't pay his bill. That's why he was victimized. So, and then the other thing I wanted to do is I wanted to take a little time and see if I could find in other communities if this is an anomaly as well. And it seems very, very consistent with what other communities are going through now and in previous years as well. So, having said all of that, I think there's a couple of issues here. I think there's potentially a customer service issue and how when you talk, when you call people on the phone, how that was received. And then there's what we can do legally, and then there's what we can do creatively. And then what is the right thing to do and the fair thing to do for the town, those of you that did not receive a bill or feel like, and you're saying you did not receive a bill, and for the people that have paid, did receive a bill and paid. And I'm still looking into that. I mean, the information that you were giving in terms of what we're allowed to waive is correct. That being said, I'm not necessarily sure that's the final answer. So I just asked you to give me a little time to do some more research on it and see what we could do. I know. You're not going to get arrested, I promise.
If people need to talk, you can come back up to the microphone.
Can you come to the mic?
You need to come to the microphone, otherwise.
So thank you, that sounds very reasonable what you're saying. What I was also told is that from other experiences with neighbors, that if you don't pay your demand bill or if you don't pay for some reason, you're gonna have trouble with the registrar. So you never know when you're gonna need to go there. Also, I will point out to, I'm 56, I've been around. And I've lived in multiple states, and I had a problem in Minnesota with Bank of America, where they kept insisting they were sending bills that I never received. And I went to the post office, and I got the inspector general involved. It was crazy. Well, it turned out that it was a glitch at Bank of America, who had insisted for 6 months that they had been sending letters out. Turns out computers are not what we think they are. So while I respect what you're saying, I can tell you that my mail is not great. I went across the street just yesterday to retrieve it from the ground because my lid was not closed. So I do owe a trip to the post office, probably not on this issue based on the volume, but for other reasons.
Yeah.
So that having been said, I do appreciate you doing that diligence. It sounds legit from that perspective, and hopefully we can find a creative solution.
I mean, one thing I would note as Katie's getting up to the mic is that one of the things I would suggest is that we do have an online service that you can sign up, and then it will give you reminders in addition to the bill. That puts more of the onus on you, I guess, to sign up for that reminder, but it's another safeguard in place.
You're not waiting for paper.
Mhm.
You're getting the email with your invoice. And you can do that for all of your town bills.
Yes.
I appreciate you looking further into the matter and seeing if there is anything that you can do. I think that's very fair. I do want to ask, do you suggest that we go ahead and pay the bill, or how do you think we should handle that?
Go ahead and pay the bill, please,
Mm-hmm.
and we'll rectify it.
Okay.
We'll look at some kind of way to take care of it on the other end.
You're absolutely right with respect to the registrar. If you go back, if anybody's here, the licenses are ready for renewal, they won't renew your license.
There's a certain
So
time.
there's a certain time frame that you have to
Yeah.
follow, so you don't wanna put yourself behind the 8 ball with respect to that. And again, no one's trying to make excuses or, to say it's not this fault or that fault. There has to be a resolution someplace, so I'm sure we'll find a happy medium to work on that. But in the meantime, don't make it any worse for yourselves by not doing something.
Right.
Okay?
Leslie, nobody's gonna arrest you, at least for
God, no.
this.
I wouldn't
At
do
least
that
for
to
this. I don't,
Yes, Steve.
But the other issue, the other issue, Michael, also is what Leslie brings up about maybe some of the customer service component as well, and, you know, how we address,
Yeah.
you know, the interaction.
I mean, I agree. I mean, generally, I've found them to be very professional downstairs. Usually when people talk to them, they are either paying a bill or complaining about a bill. So it's usually not a setup for a positive conversation. That being said, there are standards that we should meet.
Great, thank you.
Michael, this was just brought to your attention yesterday, correct?
Correct.
So this was something that had been talked about in the treasurer's office, but not escalated to you at all until
Yeah,
yesterday?
simply because the amount of volume at the treasurer's office was not inconsistent with previous years, so.
All right, well, thank you for coming forward. I think we're all, have the same perspective that, you know, as citizens and residents and people that are the heart of this town, that we want to make sure we're providing good customer service, and we're, you know, we want to treat people fairly, so we're gonna, I think, do our best to resolve this in a fair way. So thank you for that. Okay, so, the next item on our agenda.
Want to continue with public participation?
Oh, I'm sorry, we should, yeah.
Mm.
Karen, did you, anyone else for public participation at this point? Yes, go ahead.
Hi, Karen Allers, 53 Teller Drive. So I always made my kids thank their coaches every single practice and game for their volunteer service. So every time I stand in front of you guys, I will thank you for your
boy.
service, because I do appreciate all of the effort that you put in. I'm sure it's a lot of hours. I'm here today because I understand that the board is considering changing its name from the Board of Selectmen to Select Board, or some other non-sexist title. That is great. I've been waiting for this for a very long time, so thank you for bringing this issue up. Gender does not belong in job titles, because it can discourage people from aspiring to a particular occupation. Language matters. Making occupation titles gender-specific conjures images of only people of that gender working in that job. That's why we've changed police, fire, and mailmen to police officers, firefighters, and letter carriers. It's why we now refer to stewardesses as flight attendants, also because men that aspired to that position didn't want to be called stewardesses, so they wanted to be called flight attendants. We don't call male nurses anymore, we just call them nurses. When I started practicing law 30 years ago, I was always referred to as that woman lawyer. Now I'm just a lawyer.
That's great.
I work with many boards of commissioners, and they don't call their leader the chairman anymore. They refer to their leader as the chair. Go to any college campus, and freshmen are now called first years. I don't know if any of you have college-age students, but they're called first years now. If a woman is in charge of a company, they don't call her the directress, right? They call her the director. We don't man a table at Ashland Day, we staff the table. These are easy changes to make. So why is it that so many people are opposed to these changes? And I know that there are people out there who are opposed to the changes, because I saw them on the Ashland bulletin board when I made a comment. So some folks have a vested interest in keeping things the same. I'm not sure why, but for most people, I think it's just discomfort. It's uncomfortable to make changes in the way that we talk. And I'm sure you'll even hear some women who say they don't want the change to happen. I think you'll probably remember back to the early women's movement in the 1960s, when lots of women didn't want political or economic or military opportunities. Just Google Phyllis Schlafly as an example, and you'll see what I'm talking about. But discomfort's not a good reason to stick with a sexist tradition like this one is. Some women, I think, in political positions actually don't advocate changing these sexist titles because they don't want to use up their limited political capital, especially if they know that there's going to be opposition. Or sometimes being a feminist is just vilified in certain political circles, which makes me sad, because being a feminist just means that men and women should have the same rights. So if you're not a feminist, I don't really understand why that is. If your biggest argument with making this change is that you don't like how select board sounds, I hear you. I'm not crazy about it either. It sounds a little weird. So call it a board of commissioners or town council. One person would be a board member or a commissioner or a counselor.
Change everything.
If you still have strong feelings against making this change, consider how you'd feel joining a board of select women. How would the men on the committee feel about the committee being called the Board of Select Women? I doubt you'd want to be on the committee if it was called that. And my understanding is that this is the first time that Ashland has ever had two women simultaneously sitting on the Board of Selectmen. Has anybody ever considered why that is? I'm sure that the title isn't the only reason, but I'm sure that it plays into it. What do we want for our daughters, for our granddaughters, our wives, and our boys? Sexism hurts boys too, and men. And what about what's in the best interest of the town? So studies consistently show that gender diversity on boards and other in other companies improves performance. The Harvard Business Review just published an article on this in March. You can Google that. I know we all want more women to run for this board, and I think changing the title makes sense. The change is long overdue. Ashland's not going to be able to lead on this issue because many towns have already made this change. Just look at our neighbors to the west. Hopkinton is already the select board, and as just a little side, I've been speaking with some folks from Hopkinton who said that their board of selectmen were opposed to the change, and it went to town meeting, and it overwhelmingly was passed at town meeting. I don't think the members of Ashland are probably that different thinking than the members in Hopkinton. Even Star Wars has changed to "We will boldly go where no one has gone before." So, let's move into the 21st century in Ashland, hopefully before the 21st century is over. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. Well said. Yes, Kate?
Kate Jerzik, 11 Rodman Road. There's something on the agenda later, but I think that this is our only time to speak. Is that correct?
Well, not
Or-
necessarily. What's the agenda item you're interested in?
Well, I saw on the consent agenda the excess property of the Hall House, and I'm very concerned about that.
We are going to speak to that during our discussion on priority projects update, so that will be fully explained at that point.
But does that mean the public gets to comment
Well, that's to be
later?
determined, all right? So
No,
why
so-
don't you wait until we discuss it, and then we can open it up
So
at that point.
whoever's the chair at that point may allow you to speak. I don't know. So we'll see.
Well,
But if you have a short message you want to say now, go ahead.
It's more appropriate during a
Yeah, go ahead.
conversation, but I
If you-
don't know if
Yeah.
people will be allowed to speak at that time, so that's
So
my
do you have a
concern.
statement to make?
Yes, if,
Okay.
so I'm just requesting that you don't approve that, specifically that excess property, the Hall House, at this time on the consent agenda. And to be honest, I forget the exact date, but we, not too long ago, had a public forum about Ashland properties. And it wasn't super well attended, but it wasn't poorly attended. And I was one of those people that gave my time. And to see it show up as excess, I really, first of all, felt disrespected of my time at that forum. And I think we left with the forum with knowing there's more work. We said there would be more public things. I also spoke when we had a caretaker position that's related to Hall House. One of the issues was to include public participation about dispensations of the property, and I was assured that would happen. And it might have been some more public stuff saying we're accessing Hall House. I could have missed it, but
No.
I am an engaged citizen and I do pay attention, and I didn't see anything. So I'm not speaking saying I don't think the town of Ashland should ever not consider selling Hall House. That isn't what I'm asking. I'm asking that the public is part of the process. And I think it needs to be evaluated in a whole plan. And I just feel like that's just chinking away. We talked about, there's quite a bit of, I would say, energy and excitement about possibly a Warren district related to that. Now this is potentially pulling that out of that. So I would respectfully ask you not to access that property and to put it back on a public process for discussion.
So thank you, Kate. I suggest you stay around for that discussion, because I think we'll have an interesting discussion. And for those of you who don't, Hull House is where Henry Warren invented the electric clock, which is probably the most important industrial I would say, historical site in this town and very important in United States economic history, too. So it is an important house, and I expect we'll have a substantial discussion about it. So, yes, Chuck?
I'm Chuck Lids, 150 Oregon Road. I think the board knows that I am something of a climate change fanatic, and
You mean realist, right? I mean,
well, that too. But I really wanted to thank Michael and the board for everything you did on the Eversource pipeline change. I don't know, we're gonna win this, we're gonna lose this, but I really appreciate that you listened to what many of us in the community said and did your very best, and thank you.
Good.
Thank you.
Thank
and
you.
we will be discussing that later on as well. Yes, Mark, go ahead.
You know, you got a couple minutes before public hearing, so-
I waited this long, I did good so far.
And then we can-
Good evening,
Good evening, Mark.
and my name is Mark Tassoni, 49 Hawthorne Road. And to the newest camera in the room, I'm not gonna break the lens. Okay, I got three things I wanna bring up. One is congratulations to new elected Vignani and new member Brandy. Welcome to the circus. Two, home life is a lot better. My dad is now up and around stronger. Three, I had taped a new show. I hoping that it's been on for about a week or so, and it's on many different times. It's about the Eversource pipeline. It's called Mark Tassoni's Eversource Pipeline Update. I did research, I did looking ups, and if anybody's seen it, there's been no emails yet, any questions, but I'm hoping that both towns can work together on this, because both towns, all citizens, all walks of life, is gonna have a say, it's gonna have a feel, it's gonna have a stress test on it. I know exactly where everything is. I did searching, I did talking to both towns, and I know you got this brief coming up later on. I just wanted to say, my show is Mark Tassoni's Eversource Pipeline Update, and the theme song has the Mutant Ninja Turtle movie soundtrack theme song on it.
Awesome.
So, every time you see Mario with a shell, that's me up there.
We better cut it off here at 7:30.
Well, I have a couple minutes. Yes, sir.
So
Do you have-
Carl Reese, 218 Myrtle Street, my first meeting, and here I am complaining twice. I apologize for
You're gonna
that.
do
but
it big, you know?
I might as well, right? You know, so, first-time visitor, second-time complainer. I don't know, you know, I've been meaning to get here for quite a while, actually. I moved in 2017, and I love Ashland very much. I've spent the previous years in Framingham. But I'm new to Myrtle Street, so to speak, and I'm new to the speeding. I live on a blind curve, and I've been in touch with the police department multiple times. I have a 20-year-old son who drives and commutes to college, and leaving our driveway is unbelievable at certain times of the day. I do have to use the mirrors across the street, which ironically, here we are talking about something that's illegal again. Those are technically illegal, but they do work. And they did do a road test, but I never saw the results. I was promised the results by the officer, I don't remember his name at the moment. Very communicative and then kind of vanished. So, but I mean, I get clipped going to get the mail and get beeped at. I have to do it from the back side of the mailbox. So I am on really a bad curve, but it is what it is. Great house, but that's where it is.
What number, Mark?
218.
218.
So catty corner across from Green Street.
Street.
I am telling you, 50, 60, 70 miles an hour, people are going by, and it is not getting any better.
You wanna-
I was told that to set up for a police officer to stand on Green Street and clock only works for a short period of time. To do the, blinking reminder only works for a short period of time because, we're creatures of habit.
Is this I'm sorry to interrupt, but
Go ahead.
is this a referral to the, your safety?
Traffic Study Committee. It has been, and it was Sergeant Berman that you may have
Sergeant
spoken
Berman,
to.
yep.
And I know that the piece of equipment that we were gonna utilize was not functioning properly.
It did break, apparently, yep.
Which is the reason why the study wasn't done, but as soon as that is repaired and or replaced, that's one of the first things on the
So it has
agenda.
not been replaced, because that was a year ago that we had the
It
last
hasn't been
conversation.
replaced. That-
Okay.
Well, they're not cheap.
Understood.
Excuse me, I just have
Neither-
to, I have to
neither-
interrupt for a second. So
Go
Just
ahead.
hold on, I just,
Sure.
I have to open a public
Oh,
hearing
that's
that's
right.
scheduled at 7:30, and so we'll open it and then suspend it. So I'm required to read this. Please be advised, the Board of Selectmen will hold in a public hearing, discuss transfer of Class 2 dealer's license. Class 2 license allows the holder to sell used cars. Public notice. Here, notice is hereby given, the Board of Selectmen will conduct a hearing regarding the change of ownership for a Class 2 license. Public hearing, this is Middlesex Auto Recondition, 220 Elliott Street, Ashland, Mass. 01721. Public hearing will be held in the matter at Ashland Town Hall, 101 Main Street, Ashland, Mass. On Wednesday, June 5th at 7:30 PM. Persons wishing to be heard in this matter are invited to attend the public hearing at the date and time noted above. Interested parties are unable to attend the hearing may submit written comments to Selectman's Office, Town Hall, 101 Main Street, Ashland, Mass. 01721, or by emailing Susan Roby at sroby@ashlandmass.com. Signed, Rob Scher, Chairman, Board of Selectmen. Okay, so do I have a motion?
Motion to suspend?
Suspend.
Second.
All those in favor of suspending the public hearing, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, none. Hearing suspended, 5-0. Okay, go, continue.
Commercial interruption.
Yes.
So, and again, the tough response to that response is that my son's life is worth a lot more than that box.
I'm
And
not
I
gonna
know that
argue
you would
with you
agree
with
with that, so, but I mean, in all fairness, I cannot believe the speed that people go by. I just can't get over it. And it seems to have gotten worse since we moved in 2017, but I could be wrong. But also the trucks and the jack brakes
Yeah.
coming down that highway. And I know that Officer Kavanaugh was clocking people at the bottom of the hill the other day and nagged the truck going up. But I mean, you know, the 18-wheelers going by at ridiculous speeds as
Yolanda.
well.
And I can only relate how bad it is trying to pull out of a driveway. I live off of Green Street, so I know what it's like to even try to make a left or a right-hand turn
Sure.
out on Green Street, so.
Yolanda and I live on Prospect Street, not together, but we live.
I'm on
We live on
Prospect, she's just
Prospect,
off of Prospect.
And, but it's a challenge, Prospect Street. We just did a reconfiguration of Prospect and Elliott with stop signs, because the traffic coming from both directions is, as you described.
The traffic that you're talking about referring to, the 18-wheelers, are they coming down from Badger Road or are they coming up?
That has definitely increased both ways. There is no question about it. When I moved in, I was told their trucks are not allowed on that street.
They're not. There are
And yet
absolute
they are
signs.
there in off hours and, you know, during the day. I mean, some are doing deliveries, that I get, but most are not. And, you know, I work from home a lot, so I do get to see this going on.
Well, the bridge down there doesn't support that, which is the reason why they're not supposed to take that. And that's why there are signs there. I used to live on Middle Street, so I can sympathize with you.
Do
This
we
is
have
right there.
a concrete follow-up for?
Yeah, I
what do you
mean,
wanna do?
we can do that, but again, we need to talk to the chief about getting another officer up there to do some additional radar up there to help that, but also if Officer Kavanaugh is available, he has his, you know, his training in truck violations and stuff, and if that's something that we can utilize, I mean, they'd be more than happy.
And the
to do
neighbors
it.
concur. I mean, the next step is me getting a whole bunch of them together. If I have time, I'm a single dad, so it's like, you know, I'm gonna get people together to come
Sure.
down here and talk about the speeding, but everyone is in agreement. You take your life in your hands when you get the mail, so it's a little goofy, you know. Also, nothing's really been done since I first moved in and communicated with Officer Berman. Obviously, we know why on the box, but also the excuse of no traffic control or no radar or anything, it's just, it
Can't
falls
make-
on
I
deaf
can't
ears
make-
to
I
me.
can't
I mean,
make
not doing it at
excuses.
all seems stupid to tell me that, you know, we don't do it because it doesn't work. If it didn't work, then why do we do it at all anywhere? So I was hoping
Was that the response you got, or is
pretty
that-
much, yeah, saying that
Who did you
people-
get that response from? I'm
Officer
very
Berman, that it doesn't work. That,
Doesn't sound
you
like
know,
Officer Berman, but
it,
okay.
yep, I understand. But the sign doesn't work, the flashing sign, the slow down sign, none of this stuff
Well,
seems
you
to
know
have
what
an
works?
effect.
Giving out citation works.
That's what I
I
would
was a
think.
cop for 34 years, so I can tell you, it works.
Yeah, so I was a little bit surprised myself, but hopefully, so nothing to get done seemed the wrong obvious
Oh,
response.
I agree with you.
So something should be,
I
and
agree.
Green Street's the perfect hideaway. You can use my driveway if you want. That's totally fine too, but you might.
White Rock Road is a good place to.
All right, so.
So at least I wanted to have the opportunity since I'm here.
What's our
to bring that
follow-up
to your
here?
attention. I thank
We
you.
follow up on it.
Thank you very much.
Very
All right,
well.
thank you. All right, so I think that brings us to the end of citizens' participation. All right, so I think we'll continue, reopen the hearing and finish that off before we go into our board reorg.
Representatives here.
All right, is that all right with everyone? So, I think I
Sure.
need a vote to reopen
So,
this.
motion to reopen the public hearing?
Second. Go ahead. You're good.
All those in favor, it's been made in second. All those in favor reopening the public hearing, say aye.
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 Opposed, none. Hearing's reopened. Okay. So, do we have someone here to speak to us, or do we, Middlesex Auto Reconditioning?
Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening.
My name is Gus. I'm the owner of Middlesex Auto Reconditioning. We've been in business for about 5 years. I want to thank the town manager for giving us some business in the past. We've detailed the police cruisers all these 4 years we've been there. Hopefully we can get them in this year again. I haven't met the new chief yet. Heard he's a good guy, but I met the previous chief. He was a good, hello guy. Love that guy. He used to come down all the time to just joke around with me. So, but we're at 220 Elliott Street. I'm the owner there right now. We're a family-owned business. So my father's pretty much just transferring the dealer's license and everything to my name as the business itself. So we're just kind of doing a business transfer, and that's about it.
So you're not looking to add any more vehicles? You currently have, how many do you have available?
Vehicles?
Yep.
Right now we have about 6.
Okay.
Yeah, that's usually, I think that's what the license gives us up to sell is about 6 cars.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I have an issue with people that have Class 2 licenses that go beyond what their permit
Oh, yeah.
allows. So, so I usually drive around, so if you see this face, you know I'm checking to see the number of cars that are out there. So, yeah, I'm a stickler. That's what it is. I mean, we're the licensing authority. We have to make sure that
Absolutely.
people are following the direction that we're given. If they don't, then they have to answer for it. So
Absolutely.
that's why I asked how many cars you had.
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Is the paperwork complete on this? Any questions or
Yeah, no, it's
remarks on this?
Everything looked good.
Yeah, it's good.
So, Susan, anything you care to add?
There is nothing. Nobody commented on, nobody called in any comments on the hearing.
All
We
right.
haven't had any complaints from them in the past, and everything is.
All right, is anyone else wishing to speak on this matter?
You're done by J&R Machine, right? That little.
Right down,
thing?
yeah, we're right behind.
All right, if there's no further comments or questions, I'll entertain a motion to
Motion to
approve
close the
this.
hearing?
Second.
All those in favor of closing the hearing, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing's closed, 5-0. Okay, is there,
Motion to approve the transfer of Middlesex Auto Reconditioning Class 2 license to Gustavo Rocha.
Yes. Thank
Second.
motion's been made and seconded for the license transfer. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None. Very good. Congratulations.
Thank you.
and good
Thank
luck.
you, guys.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
All right. All right, so before we go into board reorganization, I just want to welcome our 2 new members. Oh, is that? I just want to, this is our first meeting following town elections, and we have 1 returning member and 1 new member, so I wanted to welcome Brandy and Joe to the board, and Joe coming back. So if you guys have anything you care to say, I think this would be a good time to say.
I
I'll
would
start
love
with
to
Joe.
have Brandy speak first,
Oh.
because
Okay.
she's
Okay.
ladies first in my generation.
All right, thank you. I just wanted to thank you all. A lot of people came out to vote on Election Day. I know that the numbers, people had said that the numbers were a little bit low, that there was a 10% turnout, but I see it as a really positive trend. I feel like there was a lot of engaged people. I liked the excitement, and I'm very, very humbled to be here tonight. And I'm a little nervous. I didn't think I was going to be a little nervous, but I actually kind of am. So I thank you for your confidence in me, and I'm really looking forward to working with this particular board and this group in Town Hall. I think that this is a great group. I think we're going to do great things together. I'm also really honored that this is the first time in Ashland history that 2 women have served on the Board of Selectmen. I am only the 7th woman to ever be elected to the board, so this is not an insignificant number, and an insignificant thing. So, thank you guys. I hope to continue. One of the things that was really important to me was communication and making sure people are aware of what's happening in town, we're working on what, and that's something that I want to keep continuing. I want people to feel that they can reach out to the board. And so I look forward to working with everybody and working with this group. So, thank you.
Thanks, Brandy.
Welcome.
Great.
Nice to have you on board.
Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Before we do a review, I just want to thank you for your leadership over the last year. We had some difficult conversations, but we persevered, we compromised, and we got a lot done for this community. But I'd just like to echo the sentiments that Brandy had with respect to the election. It's very humbling, especially for me. This is my hometown. I was born and raised here. I'm going to get planted here. Under a tree. And it's an honor to have and serve the people that I live with, that I've worked with, and continue looking at a vision that we have for Ashland as a whole and see it come to fruition. Takes a little bit longer than I thought it would, especially one project that's taken over 30 years, but it's finally come to fruition. That's the public safety building. And I'm very grateful for those who supported it. The vision that the people have, that it was an incredible evening that night, and I just wanted to thank everybody. I'd like to thank those that came out to support all of us during the campaign. It was a very unique election, a unique campaign. Everybody that ran, they were above board. They were very professional in their comments, in the way they held themselves. There was no low blows and no punches. It was done professionally, and it was greatly appreciated by everybody. As a matter of fact, they even said that to those that did not win. I appreciated their effort and continued support, and hopefully they continue working for the town in whatever capacity they feel they can support. And I see Kate, and I know Kate's going to do that. She's going to be our watchdog, so I can't wait to continue that. Yeah, that's right. So, again, thank you very much, and I look forward to serving you for 3 more years, so thank you.
Thanks. Any other? Sure.
Yeah, just, again, congratulations and welcome back to Joe.
Thank you.
It's been certainly a pleasure and an honor to be serving with you. We've been together for a while, so
We have been.
It's good, and welcome to our newest member. And I think it is a big deal that we now have 2 women serving the first time ever on the board. And I would just direct your view to the recognition board in the back of the room, and just point out that you're now a link in a chain that dates back to 1846, and that's a big deal. So congratulations, welcome, and I'm sure we're going to do great things together.
Yolanda, did you want to say?
Just, as well, congratulations, Joe, on your reelection. I, too, have enjoyed the time I've spent working with you and look forward to at least 2 more years as I finish out my 3rd term. Brandy, welcome. It is nice to have another woman sitting on the board with me. And as you said, I was the 6th, you are the 7th, and the first time that there are 2 of us, so it is historic. And I think we need to celebrate that and work toward maybe getting more.
Absolutely.
Thank you. And I, too, want to welcome Brandy and congratulate Joe on returning. It was that election was actually, we had some good candidates for the board, and so that, I think, was a testament to the importance of this board and the quality of the citizens that we have. So that was a good competitive election, so I think that was good.
It was very nice to see the competitiveness of the election.
Right, and we had 2 good candidates for planning board, which is, planning board's an important committee, and sometimes it's gone, that's what I'd say to Kate, sometimes it's gone with no candidates or empty seats, and it really is important, so I hope you try again and get on there, so, so as I'm the outgoing chair, and we have, we work together as 4 or 5 members, generally 5, and so, of course, that, it's kind of a unique challenge being 5 elected officials, volunteer public officials, so I think, but, one of the things is to function together as a group is kind of the challenge, but also agree to disagree civilly and work together as a team. And so I think, this, and generally the chair gets rotated every year. I've been a year and a half because it was a little unusual. But I think that's another sign that, of our expectation of working together, because if I misbehave as chair, I'm going to be not chair very shortly. So, I may not get my agenda items put on, but, so I had to be nice, but anyway. But I would say, one thing, just in thinking of some of the issues that we've been dealing with, we're fortunate that we have, pretty good resources, both, town manager and town staff and state aid. As we all know, it hasn't always been really this good. I mean, and so one of the things I think about in looking at what we're doing, if we have something, an initiative or an improvement or something that needs to be done, this is the kind of the time to do it. So, I think about what's going on in this town, and this board has been, and the manager and his staff has been proactive in identifying issues and moving on them. And we need to continue to do that because, time is running short, whether it's build out in Ashland and preserving open space or identifying places for housing or improving transportation or acting on climate change. This is the time that we have to do that. There's a lot of, the schedule for some of these major issues is short, and I'm sure people of all times have thought that, but I think this is kind of a unique time that that we're facing in terms of what's going on in the world and locally. So, the things I kind of wanted to look at what's ahead, yes, the Upper Charles Trail is one of those things up there. So I think that's a good project to keep going. We're still dealing with Eversource. That'll go on for a while. And I think, and hopefully we'll be able to resolve that positively. And I think in just looking at climate change and what we can do locally, the Net Zero Initiative is a great thing we're doing, and we need to continue to act locally. And the other thing I would just pick out as we move ahead is, continue our strategic and tactical plan, being proactive. Well, that means, what are we moving forward on and what are we looking at? And, the board, we get involved a little bit in management issues. You're kind of like the excise tax is a good example of that, but generally we're looking more at policy, our kind of vision, strategic things, generally. That's frankly all we really have time for because we're volunteers. So we have to look at the big picture, although sometimes we get involved in a lot of details. So I would think one of the big picture things is to continue the strategic initiatives here. Look at what parcels of land are left to be developed. How do we do housing with what's left? How do we do open space? What's going to be open space? The Net Zero Initiative. So I'm looking at these kind of big strategic things as but anyway, and the last thing I want to say, I wanted to thank the support of the town manager and the assistant town manager and the rest of the town staff, especially Sue Roby, our administrator, and my fellow board members for their support over the last year and a half. And so with that, I will, so thank you all.
Thank you,
I think that's about all I had to say.
Mm-hmm.
So I will, I guess now we're going to do the board reorg. So this is the time we're going to elect new officers, being the board and the vice chair, the chair, and the vice chair and clerk. Correct? Mm-hmm. So do I have a motion for that?
I would like to nominate Steve Mitchell as chair.
Is there a second
A second.
for that? Any discussion? Should we go over his qualifications?
Maybe this
He's got some good
personality-
qualifications, he's done it before, he's been sitting here for a while.
Do I have a say?
So, did I get a second?
I don't remember
did
you
get a
doing that with
second
you.
from Joe.
All
I
right,
remember if you
motion's
did that
been,
with you.
is there any other nominations for chair? All right, so I will, all those in favor of Steve Mitchell as the new chair, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, the motion carries 5-0. Congratulations,
Thank you,
Mr.
appreciate
Chair.
it. Thank you, everyone, appreciate it.
Good luck, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
All right. So I think I turn this over to you at this point.
So at this point, we have our next officer to elect is our vice chair. So do I hear a motion for a vice chair?
I'll nominate Yolanda Greaves as vice chair.
And do I hear a second?
I'll second that.
And we have a motion and a second for Yolanda Greaves. Any discussion? If none, do we have a vote? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Hearing none, congratulations to
you.
Yolanda as vice
Congratulations,
chair. And our third officer is clerk. So do I hear a motion for,
I would like
Clerk.
to nominate Joe Mignani as clerk.
Do I hear a second for that motion?
I'll second that. That'll
Okay,
teach
we've
them.
got a motion.
Clerk, by the way, just want to make sure.
Mr. Clerk.
So we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? If no discussion, can I have a vote? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? So hearing none opposed, congratulations,
Thank you.
Mr. Mignani. So-
Thank you.
So we are now reorganized, and if I can just make just a couple brief comments, and I really want to direct it towards Chuck, because Chuck had asked me, Chuck Litz, who was in the audience, he had asked me a couple weeks ago if I had an agenda. And, and it was interesting that he asked that, and my answer, as you recall, Chuck, was, well, I don't have despite the fact that we all come here with our personal passions and our interests and so on, my agenda really is our board agenda. And I think, we display that on our agenda, and one of our big board agendas is our project priority list that we review at every meeting. But then I thought about it a little bit more, and then I thought about it relative to the article about our town manager over the weekend, and thought about, if I were to suggest an agenda, it would be, more of expanding, I guess, our empathy and our compassion as a community, and how we can lend a better helping hand to people that are in need. And we've done this in a variety of ways. Our Human Services Department, Jen has been very instrumental in growing that department. But I think if there's a legacy that we could all be proud of, not just a board, but a community, is being able to grow that ability to lend a helping hand. So I hope that answers your question, Chuck. So,
Can I expound on that for a moment?
absolutely.
I attended the high school graduation last Sunday, and I can tell you for the first time, this was one of the most emotional graduations that I have ever attended. I know that Sue was there with her family because her son graduated, and there wasn't a dry eye in the gymnasium. One of the students, and who was the salutatorian, had basically done something very similar to what our town manager has done, to come forward and talk about the problems and issues that he had while he was growing up, and the adversities that he's faced. Well, the same thing with the salutatorian, battling depression. And I have to tell you, it was incredible, totally incredible. So I have to agree with you, Steve, that if we can learn from the kids of the 2019 class and how they were able to unite and support one another during this difficult time for him and many others. They actually asked, how many people here have similar issues? Please stand. I would say 85% of the class stood up. That to me was shocking in and of itself. And then when I turned to look at the audience themselves were also standing up. And it was just awe-inspiring. And I said, oh my word, this has struck home big time. So I agree with you, Stephen. I don't think it's just one group of individuals, but I think it's a community as a whole. We talk about diversity and being, connected with the diversity, but I also think it's helping those that have these issues and support those and find other means to help them along with their battles, their private battles that they fight. And I just wanted to pass that on.
Thank you.
It was absolutely incredible.
Yeah, I think we've made great strides, and Jen can talk about this better than I can, but in terms of that, the umbrella that we provide and the coordination between departments and how we can move to help, any number of circumstances, so.
And make sure that residents know that these services exist and that they can reach out.
Right. Good. So we're slightly behind, but our next agenda item is a request for an Eagle Scout project from Rob St. Germain and the Town Forest group. So if you can come to the mic.
Rob St. Germain, 64 Winter Street, and I would like to introduce you all to Sam Clancy, Eagle Scout candidate. As I think you are all aware, we have a historic stone building in the town forest. About 3 years ago, we did a quick assessment on it and realized that it had decayed to the point where it was a danger to the public. And at the point in time, we actually put caution things around it, no trespassing signs, only to discover that by keeping people away from it, we were fostering some nefarious activity up there. So we then started looking at it to see what we could do to maybe fix it. And just as we were engaged in that conversation in January of this year, Sam showed up, announced that he was a neighbor of the forest and that for his Eagle Scout project, he would like to clean up this building and make it safe. I'm going to turn it over to him for a couple of minutes so he can describe his project to you.
Hi, thanks for having me tonight. From a general perspective, my project basically consists in a very basic way, sorry for the redundancy there, of cleaning up the site around the building and shoring up parts of the building itself. It's made of stone, and the mortar is pretty old at this point, so it's decaying, as Mr. St. Germain said, but the most prominent danger is the chimney, which has sort of been eviscerated. There is stones in the center part initially, but those have fallen out over time, so it's potentially unstable. A major facet of my project is shoring that up. We already have met a mason, Mr. Rich Glidden, who has agreed to help out with that part of the project. Additional goals included clearing away vegetation, including bittersweet vines present at the site. Also clearing away scrap metal and trash, and just generally brush. Outlining the path leading up to the site. It's elevated above other parts of the forest. It's on an incline, so there's a trail leading up the hill to it. And so far, I've cleared that trail and lined it out with the trunks of small dead trees that we cleared away in the process of clearing the site around the building. And the other major thing that we've done so far is removed an old steel cylinder farther back in the woods. That was, we're not sure what it was used for, but with the help of the DPW, we were able to bring that out in April. And we have the final major part of the project was piling up all the old stones that had fallen out of the structure and were sunk into the ground and had piled up and were clogged by vegetation and dead brush and scrap metal and trash. And that has now been rectified. But I was wondering if it would be possible to get a grant in order to install a bench at the site after it has been cleaned up and made safer for public use. Everything else should be all right. I was also wondering if it was a grant for the masonry supplies, right?
I'm sorry.
We wanted a grant for the masonry supplies, right?
Masonry supplies and some lumber.
That was the other part I forgot to mention. Some of the window frames are still intact, but others have started to fall apart. They were originally shored up on the inside by wood, and we were going to shore up those ones falling into disarray with 2x4s in addition to the masonry work. And I was hoping that I could get funding in order to both repair the chimney and to repair some of the windows. The site has historical value. It was built sometime. The building itself was constructed sometime between 1912 and 1920. Originally, the place was owned by a Boston stenographer, Margaret Pittman, who later married Henry G. Chamberlain. But she had experience teaching in rural Kentucky and had wanted to provide an opportunity in Massachusetts for young people from Kentucky to come up and learn useful farming skills. And that was the original design for her developing the property. In 1942, Henry Warren bought the entire thing, but gave part of it to the town for the purpose of forming the town forest in addition to some other properties, and sold another part of the property with the building located on it to Mr. Carl Walter, one of the founders of the company that would later become Kitty Fenwall. Mr. Walter used the building, since it was far out from the main part of town, to test fire alarms, and it acquired some fire damage during its use for that purpose, after which it might have begun to fall into disarray. And then in 1973, the property passed to the Warren Benevolent Fund and is now part of the town forest.
So, Stan, I'm
Well
sorry.
done.
But I just have a quick question. You're not seeking to rebuild, but just repair the
No,
the
just-
area
just
that
repair and
around
make
it,
it safer.
including the chimney. Is that right?
Yes,
Okay.
we've also gotten in contact with the Ashland Historical Society, and they'd said that they'd fund a plaque that we could put
Like
up.
kiosk or something, so that way people know
Yeah, so
what
people
it's
would
about?
understand the
Okay.
significance of that.
Nice.
Actually, there are two phases to the stabilization right now. Sam is doing the cleanup
Yeah.
and the making safe. The chimney is the worst safety factor. Through Doug's help, we were able to find a fellow who grew up in Ashland who's a professional mason, Rich Glidden. He has volunteered his time, so the masonry supplies are for Rich to use. We will also try to, with amateur help, secure some of the other stones around. Joe Magnani stopped me in the car the other day and volunteered, done some masonry work, so we're gonna hold him to that.
I was the grunt for my uncle and my father. I was the cement carrier. I didn't do any of the work itself. I just carried the cement from point A to point B.
And just real quick,
Clarify that.
there'll be a phase two after
Okay.
Sam's work is done, and that is to actually stabilize the building. Weather continues to erode the building, so we'll put a cement cap on the top, and that's outside of his scope. We'll put a cement cap on the top and either some sort of metal or wood covering to stop the water from penetrating. Should the town at some point in time be interested, I have a ballpark number of around 200,000. It's a lot of money.
To restore it to where it was.
To put a roof on it, restore
Okay.
the windows, this is not counting,
Yep.
electrical or anything like that, but just to make the building intact and stable.
Yeah.
Okay.
Brandy, you had?
Yep, I just wanted to say thank you, Sam. This is a great project, and thank you for taking this on. I was curious, how long do you think your portion of this project would take?
So far, I've done 2 weekends of work, each comprising about 4 hours of volunteer time, and I'm looking for approximately 1 or 2 more weekends of comparative length to complete my portion of the project.
He has done a great job marshaling resources, showing his leadership skills. I think you had, 15 people up there one day and a dozen on another day?
15. We've had very good turnout so far, so
great.
it's off to a great start.
Great.
Good.
There were 3 truckloads of trash taken out of there.
Wow.
I just wanted to mention just all of the work that's going on in the town forest, and, the trail work and the signs, and so on, and I know there's been other Eagle Scout projects as well going on in the town forest. I think it's just terrific that, we've got that group of young people willing to invest in that. So you were looking for some funding. I think you're looking for $500. And then there's an additional request regarding a potential bench as
Yeah.
well. So we have a picture of a bench. Do we have, and we have some pricing on it as well. So I'd like to open up discussions about the funding piece here, something that we would take out of, obviously, our gift accounts.
Before we do that, just a couple questions. First of all, thank you for taking on this project. I'm always amazed at what the Eagle Scouts in our community accomplish and all the work that they've done. In regards to the funds, so you're looking for the 500 for some of the equipment and then the bench. I know a lot of these projects, people go out and do fundraising within their family or friends. Will you be doing other fundraising, or are these the only funds you're looking for is from us?
I may consider looking for other funding outside for extra goals. We are also considering putting a cement cap on a floor inside the structure, which might not be that hard or expensive, but I may need to look for additional funding
Okay.
in order to do something about that.
And I would, anyone that is interested, the town forest is a great place to hike, number one. And this is just a very short distance off of the the Winter Street parking lot. And as Sam had described, it's up a spur trail that goes up just the short ways to where this stone structure is. So,
And what other weekends are you gonna be doing work? Cause we might be able to help you recruit.
I wasn't planning to do any during June,
Okay.
but my family is going on vacation soon. But in July, after July 15th, I was planning more dates. I'll also have time in August after that, but I haven't really formalized anything yet.
Okay, well, let us know and we'll help get the word out if you're looking for extra volunteers.
Thanks very much.
You're welcome.
so to start the discussion on funding, so the $500 request, initial request is for the stabilization of the structure. And then we're looking at a bench. You have a preference for a bench here because you've got 4 examples. And
I wonder if there's other organizations that may be willing to donate a bench.
My personal preference would be for the Belson plastic recycled bench on the, I think it's would be on the second page. It's a
Is
two-sided
that the one
thing.
that has the Home Depot
the
one
back?
above it?
The one without the back, actually,
Oh, without
on
the
the,
back, okay.
on the
Oh,
second,
okay.
the one on the top
Oh, the
there.
Belson online, yep.
However, as you can see, the shipping cost is somewhat exorbitant. So even though I would favor this bench, aesthetically speaking, I might more realistically lean towards the Home Depot bench with the metal bench, since that's significantly less expensive at only $493 as opposed to $700 and or $800, sorry. And then the other one I might consider as well would be the other Belson model, the longer 6-foot recycled plastic backless bench with at $271, but with shipping costs not ascertained yet, but presumed to be comparable to the other one. That would be around $600 total with shipping included, assuming that, of course, shipping costs are comparative to the other one.
so just to, again, get to a funding amount, so I would suggest, my suggestion is that we consider, because I think it would be a good idea for you to do some additional fundraising as well. There's other organizations out in the community. Both Yolanda and Rob and I are members of the Ashland Lions, so that's certainly an opportunity. So my suggestion to the board is we certainly fund the 500, but we increase it to not to exceed a $750 amount, and then, you know, you can go out fundraise to get to the bench that you really
other
want,
sources.
right?
That sounds good.
Sounds good.
That reasonable?
That sounds good.
So-
Very
So I'll
reasonable.
entertain a motion to support the Eagle Scout project not to exceed $750.
So moved.
Second.
And all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye, and all those opposed. So that's 5-0. Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Great
Thank
work.
you.
Good luck,
Thank
Stan.
you,
There's a lot
Rob.
of organizations
Yeah.
out there, so don't be afraid
Thank
to
you on
ask.
behalf of the Forest Committee.
Thank you, Rob.
Thank you
Very
very
good.
much for your time.
Thank you.
And good luck.
Good luck.
Thank you, Rob.
Good work. All right, our next agenda item is our review and discussion of the fiscal year 18 external financial audit, and that is Melanson and Heath. Come on up.
Thank you for your patience.
Good evening. That's going to be tough to follow. That's fantastic work that you're doing. You should be very, very proud of that. I didn't make it past Weeblo Scouts, so that's very good work there. My name is Ed Boyd. I am an audit principal with Melanson Heath, and I am here to deliver the results of the June 30, 2018 financial statement audit. So I thank you folks for the opportunity for me to be here this evening. And I'd also like to thank you folks in the audience, because typically when the auditor is called up, that's usually the cue to leave the room. So I certainly appreciate that. As I said, I'm here to deliver the results of the June 30, 2018 audit, and I think you're going to see that it's a very positive one. Even though I'm here in June now, it's certainly not indicative of the process. It's I think just getting in front of this group here. overall, I want to tell you that the audit went very well. I'd like to, thank town manager and, the leadership team and the finance team for, for their openness and their engagement with us, when we come here during field work, because it's paramount to an effective and an efficient audit. So I'd really like to just take that time to recognize, the hard work of folks here, that really, help us through our process. So just some things that I am required to tell you folks here. Again, I think overall the audit went very well. We found the books and records to be in good working order, found key accounts to be reconciled on a timely basis. There were no disagreements in the application of generally accepted accounting principles. There were no material weaknesses or significant deficiencies in internal control. And I think just as important, we have issued a unmodified or a clean opinion, which means that the town's financial statements are in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles that local governments in the Commonwealth and across the country follow. So that's as good as it gets. Now, in years past, I think we've gone through some pages in the financial statements. I'm happy to do that if you'd like, or I'm prepared to really just kind of structure it on some financial highlights and try to focus on just some of the key metrics that the users of the financial statements are looking for. And it's similar to, really what the rating agencies look at, and I think that that'll be good for you folks to really get a pulse on where things were as of June 30, 2018. So
The highlights would be fine.
thank you.
And then recommendations.
Absolutely. So I'll go over some highlights, and then we'll talk about some of our recommendations, or just a couple of opportunities where some improvements could be made. Certainly nothing alarming, but the town has been very receptive and active in receiving the feedback and making taking action accordingly. So for starters, we'll talk about your general fund. And the general fund is typically the first place that a reader of the financial statements is going to go to. The financial statements are a 70-page document, but unfortunately only about 5 or 6 pages are really looked at. And the key number is the unassigned fund balance in the general fund. Now, in the set of financial statements, your general fund is a combination of your true general fund along with your general stabilization account. So I want to make that clear, because that differs a little bit from some of the reports that you folks look at. But as of June 30, 2018, the unassigned fund balance was about $8.7 million. That was up over $1 million from the prior year. That represents about 14.5% of your operating budget. That is a very good, stable number. And again, I think to go back to some of the comments that were made by the previous chair earlier, that didn't just happen. I think it's taken some good decision making, looking at some budget control, and planning to get to that level, and something that the town has really sought after in becoming a AAA rated community. And that's something as a benchmark where your peers are. Typically, groups like the GFOA will recommend having somewhere in the range of 10 to 15%, and that's where you folks are, and that's also where your peers are. So again, I think stable is a good number, and again, you've taken steps to get there. It just hasn't come from waving a magic wand, if you will. In addition, we've seen continuous funding of stabilization accounts, both the general, but then what was your OPEB stabilization, and a handful of other ones. In addition to that, this community's been active in funding capital with existing resources as part of the general fund budget, along with utilizing free cash. And why I'm bringing this up is those 3 different bullet points, if you will, those are credit strengths. And those are what the rating agencies are looking for, to be looking at, maintaining good levels of resources, along with, putting money back into the community. Which then leads into my next topic is having a manageable debt burden. One thing that the rating agencies will look at is how rapidly you're paying off your debt. And as of June 30, 2018, I know there has been some borrowing since then, but 89% of the governmental funds, or your general fund debt, is paid off in 10 years, And on the business type activities, which is your water and your sewer fund, 93% is paid off in 10 years. Typically, the benchmark or the sweet spot, if you will, is about 75% paid off in 10 years. So you're exceeding your peers. And again, I think credit strength is really the key phrase that I'm going to use there. So all really good things here. Now, the next two items that I'm going to talk about are more of a long-term in nature, and they're items that every community in the Commonwealth and across the country is dealing with, and that's pension and OPEB. I'm sure that's no surprise to this group, and unfortunately it is something that I have to talk about are these long-term liabilities, or I tried to rephrase that the other night, and I said incremental funding opportunities. I don't know if that's going to stick, but that's what
Positive way of looking at it.
that's how I phrased it. So I'm going to try to stick with that now. And you know, I think with pension, it's something that's been on the forefront for some time now. And as of June 30, 2018, the town did have a $32 million unfunded liability as a member of the Middlesex County contributory retirement system. But to add maybe some perspective to this is that there is a plan in place, and retirement systems in the Commonwealth are supposed to be fully funded by 2040. And as of right now, the funding schedule for Middlesex is 2036. So that has held. And again, many things have to happen, and assumptions, you know, really have to hit over the next couple of years. But there is a plan in place to deal with pension.
Can I interrupt you for a
Please
second?
do.
Because this has been a key question, but not only for this board, but even for the FinCom and at town meetings, is the respect to the OPEB amounts that are obligated by the town. Is Ashland the only unique town that hasn't paid over? There are other towns in the Metro West area that are that far lacking as well, by not, when I say lacking, by not paying or being up close to where they need to be.
There's a number of communities that are still lagging. I think you're seeing your higher rated communities, your AAA rated communities are certainly taking a much more proactive approach. It can be a hard discussion, you know, when you're trying to talk about OPEB versus hiring 2 police officers. It can be a little bit of a challenge. But you know, I think trying to be a community that pays for or puts aside money for benefits, you know, today, and not really pushing it off onto that next generation, that next taxpayer, I think is something that is looked at as favorably. And again, I use the word perspective. I wouldn't be doing my job if I said, go fund this right now. It's something that I think in time can be chipped away at, if you will. Particularly where we've talked about pension hopefully being fully funded in some time. You know, communities are exploring that option too, as if that pension assessment, if you will, starts to go down, that you know, those funds can be reprogrammed towards OPEB.
Just
Yes.
real quickly, if I may. Ed, can you explain how these liabilities provide budgetary pressure? Because, for example, you said a $32 million outstanding pension liability. Some people hear that and think that sometime the town's going to get a bill for $32 million that has to be paid at that point in time. And the same thing could be said with our OPEB liability. But can you explain it's not necessarily like that? It's more of an incremental budgetary pressure as your assessment goes up?
Yes. So that's a great question. You know, so I talked about there being a funding schedule in place, and you know, so every, call it a year, sometimes 2 years, you'll kind of do a look back and see where key assumptions have hit, and you'll recalibrate, if you will, and look at what additional funding over a particular period of time is going to be necessary to hit some targets, and again, I think incrementally try to fund that deficit, if you will. But at times it again, while it's not coming up right now, you are experiencing something to the level of 6.5% to 7% a year to again try to make up for some decisions, 20 years ago to more current assumptions that haven't been as accurate. So while you don't necessarily feel it all at once, there does need to be, I guess, a recalibration in how we're still gonna stick to that 2036 number. But again, it will create some budget pressure for a number of communities. And that's why the OPEB trust fund, and I know we're kind of getting a little off topic, but the OPEB trust fund is something that I think is looked at as favorable because, when you look at that pie, if you will, and how much money is dedicated to these fixed costs, something's got to give unless you have available resources. And with the OPEB trust fund, that money's not just sitting there and as something that the actuary can just look at and say, well, Town of Ashland set aside some money. Down the road, that's something you folks can draw on specifically for those types of costs to, again, alleviate some budget pressure in what the taxpayer is going to have to pick up. Did I answer your question?
Yeah, I think that's good. I think one of the things that's important is your percentage increase can go up, especially with OPEB, as the number of retirees that go on retiree health insurance increases. So that's where that budgetary pressure starts increasing. So instead of maybe a 5% increase in your health insurance costs this year, or in a particular year, it might go up 8% as you have more retirees on the health insurance. And as Ed's saying, by having a well-funded OPEB trust, you can use those resources to help minimize that impact on your budget. So.
Good, thank you.
And I guess just kind of carrying that over into OPEB, I think that's a pretty good segue. And it's fairly similar. It's OPEB, and for those in the room, OPEB is other post-employment benefits, and predominantly that's retiree health care. And the way that was dealt with previously is that retirees, that benefit, if you will, was paid on what was called a pay-as-you-go. Once those individuals retired, they would stay on the plan, and the town would pick up the tab, if you will, at that point in time. And what the accounting standards have done is try to recognize that benefit when it's being earned over the life of that employee, and trying to be mindful that if you tuck money away now when that is being earned, that expense is being incurred, you're going to be better suited for down the road. And I don't need to go too much certainly into detail. It sounds like this group has had some really good conversations. And again, I think the key word, and I've heard it a couple of times at this meeting, is proactive. And that's what I think is significant. You certainly, and being proactive, again, I think this is maybe being a little too simple, but you don't have to be reactive. And I think you folks being able to put forth some of these initiatives are putting you in a good spot to maybe not have to make some of the really tough decisions that some communities are right now. And again, you're able to keep some continuity in town operations the way that you folks want and that the citizenry deserves.
Great. So, any questions for Ed at this point?
If you could just talk to some of the recommendations,
Absolutely.
because I know sometimes the people that are watching say, we haven't really heard the results. How is the town doing to prepare and to take care of their books? So if you could just touch on some of the recommendations and what we as a town can do better moving forward.
Absolutely. So our recommendations are put forth in what's called a management letter, and we issue this to just about every community that we audit. And Ashland has been one that's been very open and receptive to any recommendations, how no matter if it's something that is what we would call not material or negligible. They've been an open group that looks to really want to put forth the best effort. So our first comment relates to improving internal controls over departmental receipts. And really what we're getting at here is that it would be helpful if the town had what would be more of a kind of guidelines and policies that would promote some consistency and some continuity. And we're not saying that that's not the case, because there's regular department head meetings, and accounting has worked with departments as far as kind of a basic level of record keeping, but having a accounting manual, policy manual, it's something tangible. It's something that you folks can look at and kind of consistently reevaluate and say, is this the way that we want to be doing things? Could we find some efficiencies here or there or over there? So that's really the crux of that is, you know, we've seen a number of communities who may not have policies, but they've had long-term employees who have just been, they know how to operate. And then when turnover comes, things kind of fall by the wayside. So having some documented policies is really helpful in maintaining a kind of a minimum level of internal controls, but also promoting some real good continuity in how things are being done. The second comment actually was, this is, to give the town credit, this is something that was actually resolved in FY18, and that's in relation to single audit changes. And the single audit is regards federal awards. So as a recipient of federal awards, the community needs to document certain elements of how they're handling cash and procurement and things like that, and that was resolved in FY18. I think on the theme of policies, comment number 3, a write-off policy. At times, and many, this is a comment that we've issued to a number of different communities, and sometimes with police details or ambulance receivables, you have some older accounts that, you know, largely have gone uncollected, and rather than have someone make just kind of one decision, I think it's important that the board and the community has a document that would really outline the steps to take, and then if it is deemed to be something that is going to be uncollected, that, you know, here are the steps that we're going to move forward with. Comment number 4 was resolving year-end timing issues, and that mostly dealt with OPEB. As part of putting the actuarial valuation together, the actuary needs asset balances, and we would just recommended that the ledger was trued up a little bit more timely as of June 30, 2018, because there was just a kind of a 1-month lag in recognizing the investment activity. But I think it was important that everything was really cohesive at year end, and that the general ledger and the bank statement balances, you know, were reconciled and married. And to my knowledge, even though as of June 30, 2018, this management letter was not resolved, I don't foresee it being an issue as of June 30, 2019. Moving on to police detail records, and again, this is a comment that is fairly consistent across the board. What happens with police details, so if a police officer has to go work a detail, and they'll put together their paperwork, and the typically someone an administrator over at the police department will then put together the payroll, pay the officer, and then bill subsequent to that. At year end, there's typically a timing issue, because you've paid the person around the last week in June, but the bills don't go out until sometime in July. So if you take a snapshot at June 30, 2018, it looks like there's a deficit in the account. So what we're recommending is that the town look to evaluate and reconcile the records. Again, on a more consistent basis, but certainly at year end, to ensure that really that deficit is made whole.
There was at one time, and I don't know if they still do this policy, but they had monies set aside in the detail account for that specific purpose, so that at the end of the month of June, if there was any lag in the bill payments, that money would be there to cover that expense, and then the following fiscal year, that money would come back in, and it would replenish. So it was like a total wash of what was happening. I don't know if they still do that or not.
I don't know. I think when
It's part of our collective bargaining agreement, because as part of that, the officer would get paid the following week. So that's why the monies had to be in there, so they wouldn't violate the CBA.
We can check on that.
Yeah.
Certainly, but that is, you know, I think one thing leading to that year-end timing issue is because, yes, the officer needs to get paid for that time work, and that part is happening. So, again, I think it's more of less just kind of some housekeeping at year-end. and something that I think will be resolved very quickly.
Great.
And lastly, the comment, again, I feel like I'm repeating myself, but just this is some consistency in these recommendations with other communities, and certainly as we're moving into a world where there's more technology, and the town has certainly embraced that. But in the accounting software and in the financial reporting package, one thing that we're really trying to have our clients look at is user access. And so we have well-designed internal controls, but that they're only as effective if they're operating in the way that you've designed them. And in many cases, you have folks who might be a clerk in one department who have total access over the general ledger. You know, you certainly don't want that, one click of a button, and someone not knowing what they're doing. And that's not necessarily the case here, but we're just having the town just take a look at, you know, making sure that permissions and access is granted based on proper roles and responsibilities. And then on top of that, you know, trying to make sure that measures are taken when folks are no longer working for the community, that access has been properly terminated, so that no unauthorized access to the system occurs. So again, kind of a boilerplate comment that we're providing to our communities as we're moving more into the 21st century.
Very good. So, any other questions for Ed at this point?
No.
And/or the town manager regarding? the
I
audit?
just want to make clear, so Ed, you mentioned the general fund before, but you also audit, as part of this, the enterprise funds as well.
That is correct.
Okay.
That is correct.
And that's part of the full report that we have.
Yeah.
Yes.
And is now available to,
Yeah, and we've posted all of the audits back, I think, to 2010 online.
So they're available online. Are hard copies available in the library?
No.
Okay, might be something to put in the library, but they are available to the general public.
Yep.
Very good.
I just wanted to note that, so we're going to finish the accounting policy and procedures manual by December 2019, which hopefully, that seems realistic. In terms of
With
getting
the
it done.
amount of activity that we do, I'm hopeful, but we kind of add new things as the year goes on, so that kind of pushes things out.
Well, these manuals, in my experience, never really get completed because there's always changes and stuff, but
It's
I'm
always
assuming
fluid.
we have a good amount of already written documentation.
We
about
do,
how to
there are a lot at the department level. I think the key is, you know, having
put
Brittany
it all
kind of compile
together.
it together.
And I just had a question, so you said the federal compliance manual is complete, can't that just be expanded to include the rest of the town? I mean, because they're pretty much the same kind of practices, aren't they? Or
I think there are elements that could be utilized. One thing that I will caution shouldn't be is related to procurement, because it differs from mass general law.
municipal.
So that would be the one key thing I would say, do not.
But you had like cash receipts in there
And so I think with
labor allocation and things like that.
I completely agree. I think there's some good elements there that can be incorporated. And then even downstairs, I was talking with Brittany, and she's got, you know, a folder of different excerpts and things that I think she's looked at and tried to assemble over the years. And trying to pick and choose, I think, what is going to really work is I think that's just it's a cumbersome process. So it's not to say that there are no internal controls, because there are, but I think having a documented manual is something every community seeks to do. But it's a lot of work, but something I think that it's been put on the priority list. It sounds like so.
And you can always make change. I mean, these things,
Yeah, they're dynamic.
they always change, so just have something that, you know, is going, okay.
One final order of business. Historically, I, in consultation with the board, or really with Brittany, have been the one appointing the external auditor. When we looked up the process this year, we realized that it's the Board of Selectmen as well. So I'm comfortable with Melanson continuing in this role. I do think it's important to have new people as the principal on the project, so you've got a fresh set of eyes coming onto it. So my recommendation would be to continue with Melanson and Heath and as long as we have a new principal. I mean,
Principal.
Ed's new. It's
I was
new
gonna say,
face.
Ed is the first time presented to us.
So, I mean, I'm talking about, you want to keep them around for a couple years. I'm trying to get you fired either. I don't-
I appreciate that.
So
But if you're in
looking for a
concurrence with
motion
that,
to
that would
appoint
be-
for a year, is that the,
or three, you're not limited like you are with town council.
okay.
Yeah, just a question. So we're under no requirements to go out to bid for auditors at any periodic time?
No. No, like I said, it's important to have a fresh perspective.
So you just added to our workload, because now we have an additional appointment to make, right?
Yes, you do.
Okay.
I want to raise.
So,
So per the town manager's request, do I hear a motion for an appointment?
I move that we appoint Melanson and Heath for a 3-year term as our external financial auditors, with the understanding that at least every other year we'd have someone new looking at our books.
I don't know, does it need to be every other year?
I think every 3, I think we reevaluate.
That's 'cause-
Every 3 years, a new
Every
person?
3 years, yeah.
Okay, that's fine, I'll amend that.
Okay, so we have a motion
Second.
and a second. Any discussion? If none,
They've done a good job so far, so, you
Yeah.
know.
okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And all those opposed? Hearing none, 5-0, and congratulations, and
And thank you for the
Thank
work.
thank you.
Thank you very much. Happy to be your auditor.
Thank you.
So
Thanks,
as an aside, Michael, separate from the audit, it was probably a couple of years ago, Brittany came, our finance director came before us with a series of data points.
Financial trend
The
monitoring
trend,
system?
that's exactly right. So was that maybe 2 years ago?
Yeah, so she updates that as part of the budget each year,
Okay.
and that's included as part of the budget, the
Okay.
financial trend monitoring system. We could certainly have her come in here and give
Yeah,
a
I think it might be good
presentation.
to do another presentation. Yeah, that'd be great. Thank you. All right.
I think it would be good to understand where we're at with the 2019 budget as we head into the end of this fiscal year.
Yes.
Okay. So our next agenda item is the update on the Board of Selectmen Town Manager Priority Project List. So, Mr. Town Manager?
Sure, and I know Kate has expressed an interest in being here for
Yeah.
an agenda item. I don't know if you want to move that first? It's-
Yes, and I will certainly entertain, comments from Kate, after you make your comments.
So, all right, so then I'll move up the Warren District. So as I think at my last report, I told you that we had submitted to the so let me go back to the plan for the Warren District that was approved by the board back in January. It was to, and that was when we had the discussion about the property manager as well. It was to make 22 Elliott Street a museum and educational center, house information about Warren Woods and Henry Warren's life and inventions. Also use it as a home base for educational programs, both locally and with FSU. The Warren Barn was going to be restored, rebuilt, and utilized as a function hall similar to the Holliston Historical Society. We want to add that as part of the National Register. As an individual building. And then 433 Chestnut Street, which is known as the Yeager Hall House, the plan was to make that a private home on the National Register. So the home privately restored and sold at market, similar situation to the Clay's house in Framingham. So that was going to be nationally register protected. So the plan was to go ahead and issue an RFP for proposals for people to purchase that, restore it, with the understanding that as part of the requirements, they have to put a preservation restriction on it. I did talk to the Ashland Historical Society very early in this plan, and they agreed to hold that historical restriction, and then also put, that kind of preservation restriction on it. So when we started putting forward to the Mass Historical Commission that we wanted to make these properties on the National Register, we came across a couple of hurdles, but the main one was that, so the Warren Barn was eligible to be on the National Register, or thought to be eligible on the National Register, but you had to include the Warren House as well as Framingham State. So the two properties were a package. Same thing with the Hall House, Yeager Hall House, is that, so the house is important, but the barn behind it is also integral to that being a part of that being a National Registry property. So as you know, the Warren House is owned by FSU, and the Hall House barn is owned by FSU. So we've got two different entities. So they asked us to talk to Framingham State and see if they would be willing to do that.
Do what?
To submit jointly
Cooperating
applications. So Dave Foster and Jen and I met with Dale Hamill and Pat Whitney yesterday to talk about a number of elements related to this, but including the National Register piece. And they seemed open to putting, helping us apply with National Register status for these properties. They wanted to know what the restrictions are, of course, and there are exterior restrictions and things you can do in terms of building. But they did seem very, very open to that, so I'm hopeful that that can happen. We also talked about the possibility of creating a National Register Historic District, which encompasses the properties, the buildings that we're talking about, 22 Elliott, Warren Conference Center, et cetera. They were a little bit more lukewarm to that idea just because some of the plans that they may have with regards to things like the conference center and the cabins and things of that nature, they thought it would interfere with that. So they weren't as open to that. I think I provided today kind of the packet that David had put together, a proposal for, to FSU. He did a really good job. The other interesting thing that came out of the discussion with FSU is they're actually looking at the potential of creating a dog park at the conference center on the fields, just because there are dogs there all the time. So they're like, if we can't beat them, let's join them. So they are looking for funding through the state budget to create kind of like a dog park area as part of the field. I asked them if they would be willing to work with us and develop some kind of partnership on that, because we're interested in pursuing a dog park as well.
I mean, I don't know that there's state funding, but certainly there's the Stanton grant that the dog park committee has been talking about to get, and if they're willing to allow their fields to be used for that.
Well, I think it's a section. It wouldn't be.
No, I understand it wouldn't be all of it, but
so we talked a little bit about that. I think they want to see how things go with the funding, but then they would be amenable to having an MOA where we provide the maintenance, like they build it, they construct it, we provide the maintenance, and they would allow our animal control officer to, give her authority over that area as well.
So they would have joint jurisdiction.
So that's another piece of the discussion.
So that's future discussion.
Yeah.
So in terms of the buildings as you described, and specifically the Hall House, and the reasons for the consent agenda item.
So as part of the process here, we have to issue an RFP. We will get proposals. The board has to declare the property surplus and then also vote to change the use. So we actually need to pull it from the consent agenda, and actually, I don't know if we can take that vote tonight. But then it actually has to go to town meeting as well. So that will be on the fall town meeting, and town meeting has to approve it as well. Just want to let you know, the RFP that we're putting together, inviting people to bid on this, clearly states the fact that the town will convey the property to the successful proposer, subject to a permanent single-building local historic preservation restriction to protect the historic exterior of the building. This would allow a town-appointed historic district commission to review proposed changes to the exterior of the building that are visible from a public way and also prevent its demolition. Single-building local historic preservation restriction shall be on terms acceptable to the town and the Massachusetts Historical Commission. So I just wanted to ensure everybody that we are still sticking with the plan that we talked about.
So, to clarify, we're pulling that item off of the consent agenda, and we're treating, we need to take a vote, but we will do that at a subsequent meeting.
Yes.
And just for my edification, Michael, so what is the major historical nature of this building? If you were to describe it, and, you know.
So the building in the barn is actually where Henry Warren created the electric clock, or invented the electric clock. So actually, my understanding is that it happened in the barn, but of
In the
course, they
barn,
lived in the
okay.
house, you know, so
Right.
it's
So the
similarly
home,
packaged,
so that's
yeah.
its major historical, I mean, it has,
Yeah.
as an,
Yeah.
as an older home.
There was
but
a
it-
section in the house, I
In the
think in the
basement,
basement
yes,
that
true.
was utilized as
workshop,
well,
yeah.
so, right, so.
And we think that basically, the stuff from the workshop, there's nothing left there, like old equipment or anything like
It's
that, or
empty.
anything? It's
empty.
empty, it's been
It's pretty
stripped.
dismal
A
condition.
year
Yeah,
ago, some
okay.
of us walked
Yeah, I was
through
there
it, and
once, I think,
Yeah.
okay.
Previously, a caretaker lived there.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's,
Well, that's what it
historically,
was.
the
It was just-
Warren caretaker lived there.
Right.
And remember, the goals that we're trying to achieve here are to preserve these properties, protect them, restore them, put them on the National Register. So, I mean, that is part of the goal here. It's just more economical to have a private entity, you
So
know,
we could
do
sell
that,
it and have some
and
fun-
then,
fun
you know,
with
make
it.
sure that it has the historic preservation restriction on it.
So the only thing I would, as we go forward in this, my only kind of reservation, I'm not sure, is that if we ever wanted to use it as, say, a museum or a fully public building, this process would preclude that. So this.
Well, it was, and this is
it
the
would
process
preserve it,
you
but-
voted to do back in
So
January.
that's the, I think
And,
that's the.
because the thought was that if you had a museum, 22 Elliott Street is
Right,
gonna be.
would be a better
would be the
place for
museum.
that.
So we purchased the property, and now we're gonna do an RFP. I just wanna make sure I have this straight in my mind. We're sending out an RFP to historically revamp that building, but we're not gonna own it.
We won't own it. It will be similar,
Then why the hell did we buy it?
well, but, so we have an
So we could-
opportunity to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we could manage it, yeah.
No, so here's the thing, when somebody, a contractor who's gonna buy it from us is not gonna give us a lot of money because they're gonna have to spend so much on restoring it.
I understand that, but again, the thick skull here is trying to understand. We spent this money for the purpose of maintaining a historic district, which is the Warren District. Now we're gonna turn around and sell it.
But in
How does
essence,
that
it will
maintain?
still be part of that.
No, it's of the historic district. It's part of it.
It's gonna be part of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, then
But we
that-
won't have the opportunity to use it.
No.
That's true, yeah. That's the one drawback to this plan,
Yeah.
is that it won't be formally public property. Presumably, they'll allow tours at some point, or that
Yeah,
kind
usually
of
with a
thing.
historic preservation restriction, they have to open the house.
Yeah.
They have like, you know,
At some
an open
periodic
house.
time, like you have
Certain
tours.
times, right, I mean, it's being done at a house in Framingham where they sold it privately, but they're still historic.
Right.
And I understand what you're saying, Joe, right, you know, one of the reasons, you know, if you go back to why we purchased this parcel was Framingham State was looking to purchase Northeastern Conference Center, they needed some assistance, because
They needed
originally
to-
we weren't looking at this house.
Right.
Right, originally we were looking at just the barn and some of the area around the barn, so it's gone through a lot of different iterations as to what we're looking to do or what we're thinking. I mean, I think the fact that we can have someone purchase it, it'll still be historic, it could still be part of the Warren district. I think, but it's, rather than the town trying to have more, you know, put more funds into it, I think it could be a win-win. It'll
Okay,
still give us the Warren district that people have, that are interested in, but, you know, we don't have the resources to put it back to where it should be.
So, okay, so isn't that similar to the milking barn? I mean, we bought the milking barn, it's
Yeah,
gonna get knocked
it
down,
is.
and now we're gonna
But nobody wants to buy and sell a milking barn.
Right.
So that, there's a difference there, Joe, but also I think there's a difference, and I think we've all been, you know, I'm sure Brandy hasn't been into the Hall House, but I think the rest of us has, and you know the condition that it's in, and the amount of resources it would require.
So where will the funds come, I mean, when the sale comes through, when this is, I'm just a little, I guess I'm behind the eight ball on this, cause I wasn't really aware that we were gonna sell it.
Joe, we talked about it.
Talked about this in
In
January.
January.
In
Voted to
January,
approve it.
was I here in January?
Yeah.
Well, we do a lot of things, so.
Yeah, I
it's
know,
slip by.
but sometimes I'm away, so I don't
The
remember.
good thing
these
is, we're
things.
not voting on this today.
No, I understand
so
that,
we
but
can
I guess
get
the
some more
question that
information.
I wanna know is, where are the funds gonna go upon the sale of this house? Is it gonna go back into, cause didn't we use CPC monies or historical monies to buy this property?
No.
Into any way, shape, or form?
No.
So where is it gonna go? Is it gonna go into perpetuity of the land stewardship account?
I think it should go back to the Warren District, and in fact, actually, what I would propose at a future date is the taxes that you receive from this property, the property taxes,
Also
go
go into
into the Warren
I
District.
I just wanna,
Yes, so we created that district, it's
Okay.
probably been
Yeah.
2 years ago
Yeah.
that we did that, so.
But I also want to point out that we bought the property, so, because Framingham State was going to tear it down, and we wanted to have the ability to save it and
Right.
keep it.
Seems like a
so we could turn it and
Does-
sell.
Any, I'm
I just-
gonna entertain any commentary from the audience at
I
this
just have a
point.
quick question, real quick. Michael, as far as the barn component of it, that's Framingham State's property, are they looking to do anything with that, or are they looking to put that as part of an RFP or anything else, or is it?
So it's our property where the barn's on.
No,
Oh,
the
okay.
barn in
So-
back of.
Yeah, the back.
the-
The back.
I thought there was a
barn in back of the
component
hall
that
house.
was-
So you're talking about the Hall House, the barn in the back?
Right.
I thought there was some sort of joint historical thing. that
Yeah,
was going to happen
they're,
with
right
that.
now, they're using it as basically a
Storage.
facilities
Storage
barn.
Yeah,
means-
facilities, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was just curious.
Kate?
Kate Jerzik, 11 Rodman Road. Thank you for pulling this. I don't know if it needed to be or whatever, but I think it needs a little more work. And I think there's one thing that I didn't hear in the RFP is affordable, and I think that absolutely has to be part of the RFP, so I hope you'll consider that. And then I also think that it shouldn't be off the plate considering the town do something, because we do have affordable money in the CP, or whatever we're calling it. We have historic, and that possibly we could do that ourselves, which does still leave us having more control. So it doesn't, from the conversation, to me, I didn't hear that those things were at least investigated, and I would love to have that be part of the conversation.
I think when we went into the Hall House, those of us who went into it and looked at the state of it, that to make it affordable would be very expensive for us if we tried to do it ourselves. And you'd have maybe 1 or 2 affordable units come out of it. So that's my remembrance of the conversation when, especially when we were in it and looked, we can go back and check that. But I think when we talked about, keeping it and trying to do our own affordable, partly because of its location and partly because of the state of the house, it didn't make sense financially for the town to do that themselves.
And I think it's also important to note, so it has to be feasible for the private party to invest the money to make it, to restore it, to make it happen. And the other thing I gotta point out is we're up against the clock. Everybody has seen the condition of this property. We don't wanna have another situation where we have the Warren barn that gets basically condemned because the beam falls down, and we're not that far away from the Hall House, so.
Yeah, so I think, I guess that is probably the danger of the timing, but somebody is probably gonna take the RFP and make money, so essentially the town could eventually, and I know that we're not a construction company, but we do have a bunch of smart people sitting at the board and that work in town that I think there's gotta be a way to at least put that on the plate as an option to consider. Because once it's gone, Henry Warren has a big history here that we don't do a good job of highlighting, and a lot of the values that Henry Warren had, we don't do a great job of kind of highlighting those, and then we're gonna sell something that really has kind of critical to that history. So I would love to see kind of revisited, and I think any housing, if the town has anything to do with it, please, it has to have affordable.
Great, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thinking about possibly doing something there.
Okay, moving on.
So we're pulling it from the consent agenda, but we're not taking a vote
We're
on
not,
anything
we're
tonight.
going
Okay.
to move that to a future meeting.
Okay.
So I think also the other thing is with the Valentine property.
Yeah.
I think it's part of, just want to give you an update on that. So we did have the Veterans Construction Team. They went through and they repaired the chimney. We're going to be having ServPro go through the house and actually pull a bunch of the rugs and stuff.
Yeah.
So.
Good.
Nice.
Okay.
you.
Next item?
Oh, yeah, the other thing I want to point out is, so we got the RFP for the designer for the Warren Barn as well. So that's going to go out. That'll be.
It's due on the 19th of
Yeah.
January.
Okay, great.
So, and Framingham State doesn't have an idea how we can develop some synergies for it right now. So, you know, what we're gonna do is we're gonna go ahead and look at reconstructing the shell and then giving us some flexibility.
So I think this is still very much a work in progress here. It's not, you know, something that is so clearly defined. I mean, we're gonna,
Well, there's bits and pieces, I think
Yeah.
but, I mean, the main thing that we heard was that people wanted to make sure that these maintain the historical components, right? And we wanted to make sure that we could restore them, they wouldn't be condemned, they wouldn't be torn down and built into something else, and they would retain that historic character.
Two things, you said January 19th?
sorry,
Is it June 19th?
June,
Okay.
sorry.
And then the second thing is, what we heard at the last forum was people wanted to have a little more input and discussion about the Valentine property and what we're gonna do there, and then the continuation of the discussion of what's going to happen regarding a Warren district and what we think we're gonna do. So is that in David's?
So July, I think we're gonna look at July having something about the Valentine property.
Okay.
The Warren district is, I mean, aside
So
from the
we're
barn, is
moving that
pretty
Warren
much
district
set.
forward, so we're gonna
Yeah,
try to, okay.
all right, next item under the priority projects.
Rail Transit District. So I think, so first of all, related to the Upper Charles Trail, I think Concom and Joel Arbeitman did a walkthrough of the site, the Trolley Brook Trail, to see if that was gonna be a viable trail or section of the trail. Don't really see that being a problem. I think Tom Powers, who is working on behalf of UGC, has been in touch with each of you individually, maybe.
Multiple times.
Yes, there's been a site walk.
You, but not with me.
Yeah, there's been a site walk scheduled for Sunday with some of the neighborhoods at 10:30. One of the things that I think we're kind of coming upon as an issue with UGC is we have this outstanding issue of 20 to 24 acres of or a deed restriction for general municipal purposes. We were thinking open space. You know, until we get that defined, it really is hard to see what can be done from a development perspective. So I'm gonna propose that we actually entertain the possibility of actually defining what those 20 to 24 acres would look like for us, and then actually giving that to UGC, seeing if they're agreeable to it, and trying to move forward from there. So provided a little bit of a concept of what that could potentially look like, and if there's a red shaded area here. It's essentially an extended buffer from the rear property line that equates to 21.6 acres. So I
So
think
this is what you're recommending, we ask for open space?
I'm using that mostly to highlight a concept, but it's actually on the lower side, 21.
But that means that they're building, so the lower people have a buffer, but not the other people.
No, they have a
So it's
buffer.
hard, so people, I'm sorry.
You have that triangle.
Yeah, it looks to me like this kind of maxes out the buffer
They would build
between.
here, and they could build there.
They can't build on that triangle.
Why not?
That's not part of their property. It's another
Oh.
parcel. And again, this is just really a concept. I mean, I'm not trying to draw.
How far back does that go, Michael? From here to here for that buffer?
It's about 300 feet.
300 feet?
Yeah.
Okay, in addition to the regular buffer that was on there, is that the total?
No, that includes part of that.
Okay,
yeah.
all right.
So I agree that I think we need to address, I think that's one of, right now, for me, one of two disconnects here. Number one is the definite, you know, our portion of the open space, whatever that is, and the agreement defines that as something that we agree on mutually, correct?
Right.
So I think that's one thing, and then I think there continues to be a disconnect with the number of units as well. And I think it started when the developer initially came to the town with their proposal, and I think created the expectation of a certain unit counts.
Yeah.
So,
And then they went back to their original.
so I think there's things certainly that need to be resolved, and those are probably the two big ones.
I agree on the number of units. I mean, I kind of went back and through my file and looked at the history, and, you know, when we talked about, you know, kind of the vision for this, and when we were actually looking at entering into a purchase and sale agreement with Mr. Gaynor, we were actually looking at it more around 90 units to 100 units, and he actually signed a letter of intent for that. You know, that did not get consummated in a purchase and sale. I think, you know, we felt a little bit of pressure to kind of preserve the rest of the property and do some of the other things with the YMCA. You know, I don't know if we can get back to that number, but I think really to kind of achieve the goals that we're talking about, that would be.
Yeah. So I think, you know, obviously we don't have consensus on this proposal here.
again,
So how do we develop a plan for the board to agree on what is the 21 to 24 acres of land that we choose to desire for the open space component?
Do you, so first, I just want to make sure that you're okay with the concept of setting aside the acreage and then presenting that to UGC and saying, okay, this is what we want for open space, municipal purposes, and this is what you would have to develop on. And obviously, there could be a couple of tweaks there, but.
But I do have a question about that. So, but shouldn't we, I guess, they're the ones that have to design this, so how is it we can tell them, you know, where the open space would be? Shouldn't we wait and get, I mean, he has put out a concept drawing, which he's been showing and was sent to us, which I don't have a copy here, but,
That they've staked out, or they're gonna be staking out this weekend and showing
Which is
to
what
the
was
public
it?
on
They're
Sunday.
doing that this weekend.
so how does it, so shouldn't we wait and react to that? And how is it this?
Well, this almost is a reaction to that.
It is.
I don't, so their latest plan that they presented, and they haven't filed anything officially.
Sure.
We've told them twice you need to make it smaller. 178 or 180 units was not going to work. You just can't fit all of that into that parcel and do the things that you want to do, which is, you know, preserve open space and then also protect the neighborhoods in addition to provide affordable housing. I feel like we've keep telling them that. They've come to the board twice. We've told them that twice. They just keep on reconfiguring the blocks, and, you know, maybe that's because they need a little bit more direction from us.
Also, sorry, I was just gonna say, I know they're also planning to be in front of the planning board at the end of the month. So, you know, if we can provide clear direction to them as far as what the space looks like before they go in front of the planning board, it would probably be more productive for them and for us. What is the total, because what's the total acreage that they have, that would be left outside of the red?
So 21, so it's 20, so let's just say 22 acres. There should be 16 acres
Okay.
left outside of that.
So they have, based on the discussion we had here, and just to reiterate that, they're doing a site walk this Sunday. They committed to doing a balloon test. They committed to doing a presentation, Brandy, you just pointed out, at the planning board, and then they have to come before the liaison, development liaison group again. So I would think during that period of time, you know, we should be developing a more clear idea of what our expectations are for open space.
And Mr. Chair, what's important for us is to consider is using that land that we have under the agreement with the former landowner to give it more of a buffer to the people that live around that area, I think it should be, to me, is key.
The one thing we want to be careful of is because there's been discussion that this might be part of the pathway of the trail, right? So I want us to be careful that when we talk about giving a buffer to the neighborhood, there's the understanding that part of that buffer could have the trail going through it. So that needs to be part of the discussion as well.
I don't have a problem with that.
Okay,
I mean,
I'm just.
I don't have a problem with that. I just,
Unfortunately, we sometimes, or it's been stated, okay, the buffer is going to be 100 feet.
mhm.
And then we decide it makes sense to put the trail in 20 of those 100 feet, and all of a sudden, there's the complaint that there's no 100-foot buffer.
Well,
So
you're
we
right.
just have to be aware, as we're talking about this and as we're planning this, we're not only looking for more open space in regards to just trees and trails and hiking, we're looking for a way to create a trail, and, you know, the Upper Charles Trail going through Ashland. So it's
Mhm.
finding a balance between both of these and working with the developer.
Well, just to clarify something, my understanding is that the Upper Charles Trail is no longer proposed to go through this
Well,
section.
but
So
it-
that's
it
my
is subject
understanding.
to having a better alternative.
Right, but I
But we
think that
haven't confirmed that
we
better
haven't, and
alternative.
they're gonna be attending our next meeting to do a presentation of proposal, but, you know, my understanding is that they have been working on a different route. So let's not get too deep in the
Okay,
weeds
just-
here at this point.
That's
but let's-
news.
That's news.
Yeah.
But Yolanda's point is well taken,
Yeah.
because this is the backup, and if the first one doesn't work.
So
we're
I
gonna
think
need
we
to-
should, at this point, you know, come up with some mechanism, Michael, that we can evaluate this in preparation for discussions we're gonna have with the developer.
And I think it's important as part of this to get feedback and input from the neighborhood. One of the things that I'm getting concerned about is like the split between, you know, we'll call it the upper site and the abutters of the upper site, and, which is around Wilbur and Russet Hill.
Yep.
And abutters on the, what we're gonna consider the lower site, which is Lorraine Drive and part of Wilbur as well. Don't necessarily wanna be in a place where we're kind of pitting one against the other.
Yeah.
I think the last plan that they sent, you know, has the development on basically all of the upper side with a road that bisects the lower side, you know, just essentially bisects it.
Yeah,
So,
okay.
so what I can do, I mean, I think it's important at the site walk that, you know, you get some feedback from people as to what they would like to see, and then maybe we can have a conversation and then we could incorporate that as
Sure,
part of
okay.
this.
All right, so another,
And how do we, how do we resolve this units thing? And, because that is, I don't know how, it's not, I mean, the open space is one issue, but the number of units also seems to be the other sticking point. So what's our track for resolving that? I mean, Tom, he's indicated to me that that's a hard and fast number. I don't know how we negotiating that? What's our position on that, and why do we have a certain position? How do we resolve that as we move along here?
well,
Is there some analysis?
I think we're gonna, yeah, we're gonna continue to have discussions, you know, either via this board, the liaison group, and the planning board, so that's gonna be the mechanism.
And what's our criteria for being concerned about the number of units? Like, what is it we want out of this?
Well, it's footprint, I think so. When we had
So
originally.
if they resolve the footprint, it wouldn't be a problem.
Well,
Or-
I mean, I think if they build 150, 700 square foot units, you know, then you've got a much smaller footprint there. I just don't see that happening. Again, I think I just go to the concept of, or the original concept, when we talked about this, which was developing affordable housing for seniors, a reasonable amount that would, again, provide actual affordable housing that includes lower income units, and also give us a significant number towards our subsidized housing inventory, so it would protect us against 40Bs, while also maintaining open space, and then also protecting the neighborhoods. I'm just not sure how we're gonna be able to accomplish all three of those with 180 units. I don't. And I think probably it would be to everybody's benefit if the board and the planning board says, you know, let's let's come to an agreement on a smaller number and work with that.
Yeah.
I will say, and I think, has been mentioned to each of you, Tom has talked about a 40B project. So that certainly has been thrown out there. Under the conventional zoning, they're allowed to do 140 units. With the deed restriction in place, they are limited to doing 180 units regardless of whether they do a 40B, so.
Okay. All right, so at this point, we will, as I articulated to Mr. Powers, that, we need to go through the process as they agree to at our board meeting. So, you're attending the site walk.
I'll be there on
Yeah,
Sunday. I'm curious, and maybe, I don't know if it's come to, I was going back into seeing when they last came to talk in front of the board, and I think it was pretty much, middle of April that they had come. Has there been, I know that they haven't been in front of the planning board as of yet. Have they?
I you could go in front of the planning board because of some of these discussions, I think.
They actually did go to the planning board months and months ago with a preliminary
right,
discussion.
preliminary.
And, but nothing that was really, they didn't have real conceptual drawings or
They didn't
ideas
make an
and so
official
on.
application.
So now the discussion here was the process is you need to go to the planning board as well and do the same thing there as you did here.
Mm-hmm.
So,
When's it, Sunday, 10 a.m.?
10:30. They
10:30.
haven't set a space, like a specific
Oh, okay.
meeting place yet.
That was in the evening.
okay, so Michael, updates on the balance of the project list?
The balance, is that what we're gonna refer to, the balance, okay.
The other three items.
No, so, public safety building, I think most of you know, we had our kickoff meeting a couple weeks ago with HKT, Vertex, and the building committee. We went through the timeline of the project, mainly in terms of design and engineering. Ultimately, at the end, we're looking at hopefully starting construction in the summer of 2020. I don't know if Joe and Steve were part of, or sooner. Joe and Steve are obviously part of the committee, so I don't know if you had anything else you wanted to.
No,
No, I think we're moving.
we're moving in the right
Right,
direction.
we're moving forward. And Joe, you're the chair of the committee, so any comments on?
No, I think we need to be where we're at right now, and we're still waiting for other subcontractors and everything to get discussed with HKT and everything else, so. I mean, we have the two important groups, the architect and the engineering group, and the OPM. So we're in pretty good shape,
Yep, good,
and other things are falling into place
good,
as we
thank you.
speak.
Downtown improvements.
Okay, so downtown, there's a couple of things related to downtown. So, BSC, they've done a lot of work in terms of doing soil probes. They haven't seen anything that is any issue including contamination, any type of contamination issues, which is good. I think the big thing is, if you remember, we were looking at a conceptual plan for, the section between Homer and Front Street to create like a bike type of situation, or, like a multimodal path.
Right.
MBTA had a lot of issues with that. We also found out MassDOT had some issues with that as it relates to the quiet zone and how that would impact the quiet zone.
On the angle?
Yeah, so they weren't too keen on that.
So what does that mean for?
I don't know. I mean, we might need to go back to the original plan.
Well, could we have it like a wider lane or something for bikes, so it's not quite so?
Or a shoulder, maybe?
Something.
I think a shoulder, if you're okay with it being like a 2-foot shoulder, I think that is something that could be workable actually throughout on Main Street.
Yeah.
I mean, it's certainly not a MassDOT approved bike lane.
No.
At least
So.
if you give people some space, it make things safer, and
Yeah.
it's well marked,
How
It's
does
too
that
bad
affect
we lose
the
that.
Complete Streets project, program that we're involved in if we don't follow the,
I don't know that we're
Conceptual.
looking at funding for that section from our Complete Streets
Okay.
plan.
just curious if.
There's
if we
other,
want.
there's other parcels there's other intersections and other roads that are working under the Complete
Yeah.
Streets plan. I don't know that that particular portion
Okay.
would is part of that. I don't think it
Just
is.
curious.
Yeah, it ties in into the sense that Front Street is going to have a bike
bad.
lane. Summer Street will have a bike lane.
Right.
Those are the main, or the major arterial.
So why don't they wanna tie those together? I don't, like, why is the problem with the quiet zone?
Just because then you have to do, right now, there's minimal changes
Right.
to the Main Street gates as part of the quiet zone. A lot of reconstruction of the Cherry Street at grade crossing, but not very much at the Main Street crossing. Having a dedicated bike lane would
Well, they're gonna have
totally
a
change.
pedestrian gate anyway, aren't they? There's no separate pedestrian gate on the quiet zone?
Not at Main Street.
The main thing for Main Street in regards to making it a quiet zone is that they add gates on the opposite sides. So right now, if you're heading toward downtown, there's a gate there. And if you're heading away from downtown, there's a gate there. What will happen with the quiet zone is I believe gates get added on all four sides.
So they're all
So you
vehicles.
have
So
4 gates.
they're all, yeah, but the one on,
Jeez.
the one on the, heading toward downtown, I believe covers the walkway. I'm not sure.
It
And I
does.
know there's a separate one
There's a big.
heading away from downtown
And I guess
for the
I'm just
walkway.
wondering, if you have a bike lane or something, why can't it just be included as part of the gate at the crossing? I don't
What,
understand why it's,
at the pedestrian crossing
yeah.
gate?
Cause you're gonna
Because
have,
it's on
you
the
have, you
sidewalk,
have to
it's
have
not even near the
pedestrian
road.
safety anyway. Well, maybe it should be then, I guess that's what I'm saying.
So I will say that DPW, MassDOT, and Stantec, who are working on the quiet zone, are actually talking to each other.
Okay, well, that's good. I mean, maybe at that point, maybe the trail needs to be right near where the vehicles are, so it can be included in the crossing without all this. It sounds like they're thinking they don't want a separate gate.
Right.
Which, yeah, sure, just move it over so it's a part of this. You have to have pedestrian safety anyway,
Mhm.
whether there's a bike trail or not, so you have a sidewalk that needs to be secure as well. So why don't they include it with that?
You're not, I mean, even if you had a gate for pedestrian safety, I mean, you could just crawl underneath.
Well, how are we handling pedestrians then? Because there's no whistle, so you have to make sure that they've getting visual or physical barriers.
So,
I think those are. I think
That's
there
what I'm
will
saying.
be-
So you'd have the same thing, maybe the bike trail at that point joins the sidewalk for that brief crossing, and you
Or is on
handle
the
it that
shoulder.
way.
or stays on the shoulder, we do
Right,
create
but
that
then
shoulder.
you've gotten rid of the whole trail, and maybe, I don't know.
I don't know.
Well,
But-
let's move on.
Yeah.
So townwide strategic plan.
Um,
I may have a question out there.
Somebody had a question.
I think Brett may
Oh, I'm
have a
sorry,
question.
you have a comment? Come on.
Can I scribble on your notes? Can I scribble on your notes?
Roberta Silma, 28 Woodridge Lane. I'm terrible with maps, so I'm the last person in the world that you should ask where this bike trail is going, even though it's been the topic of conversation in my house for the last 5 years.
Why would that be, Roberta?
Forgive me for not knowing exactly, but it would seem like a good idea to not be designing and tinkering with some permanent things that could permanently affect the bike route on the fly. And I just want to urge you to meet with the Upper Charles Trail Committee, or meet with the chair of the Upper Charles Trail Committee or something, to talk about it before decisions are made. And I know the downtown thing has to be done quickly, but it's
I agree.
it's
And
the
actually,
it's the best way to be informed to make a good decision rather than regret something later.
Yeah. I did talk to Joel last week about the Trails Committee doing a presentation at our next meeting. So that'll be on the agenda for the 19th.
And why don't we include that in this?
I was gonna
this and
say,
that,
if part of that, we could have an update on the design by Stanton for the quiet zone and from BSC for the downtown project to see how it all ties together.
I mean, I like the idea of the shoulder idea, having a
Let's see what-
dedicated.
That's good,
have a
yeah, let's
shoulder
see what,
area.
Okay.
I feel like I'm the one saying things, and maybe I may or may not know what I'm talking about, so, but.
No, you're good. Thanks, Roberta.
No,
Yeah.
but I appreciate you all considering it, and thank you, Yolanda and Rob, and for bringing it up and reminding people that it could interfere with the bike path, so thank you.
All right, thanks,
Thank you.
Roberta.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay,
And then-
strategic plan.
No, we're still on downtown.
Oh, I'm
There's
sorry.
a lot of
Yeah,
stuff.
a lot going on.
So the water main work, we had the bids come in at about $500,000 less than what we had anticipated.
Sorry, for what?
The bids for the water main work
Okay.
on Main Street and then also on Summer Street. So that's good. I think we're gonna start that work in July with Main Street.
You said that was gonna happen.
Yeah, so,
That's a good thing, that they came in $500,000 less than what you
yeah,
anticipated.
we were pleased with that.
And have we discussed the meeting with businesses that was held a couple of weeks ago? I don't know if we
It's like 2 weeks ago.
Yeah,
brought
I
that
don't know
in.
if we did,
Yeah.
actually.
No, we
So,
haven't heard
come
it.
on,
We haven't
it's a-
heard an update yet on that.
Just speak on that.
Yeah, we just had, a couple weeks ago, we met with a number of businesses on Main Street and actually in the downtown area and talked about the downtown project and potential impacts to the businesses and also ways we could mitigate those impacts. And I thought it was a good discussion. We had a good number of businesses there. I think, as with anything, communication was probably the most important thing.
Yeah.
The quicker that we can get to businesses what streets may be closed or impacted or things like that, the more they can accommodate their customers.
And I think it wasn't, it was, I thought, reasonably well attended, but we certainly didn't hit every business or every impacted property, which the town will do really on a one-on-one basis.
Right. So,
And hopefully Adam Sachs, who was there,
Yeah.
and the president of the ABA will probably, pass that
Right.
information on to those who weren't available to be at the meeting, so.
Good.
okay. And then last on downtown, just the Riverwalk. So I think the last time we talked, I told you how the bids came in pretty high.
Yeah.
Roberta's wincing back there, because we talked about that. We came back, we did a little evaluation. We looked at some ways where we could cut potential costs. One of the things that we're gonna do is we're actually gonna have DPW do some of the prep work, so that cuts some of the costs out. Doug was excited. He knows when he gets the calls from me, it's like, oh, there's a project coming.
More work.
Yeah. I think the bids are gonna be due next week for the reduced scope, and so we got our fingers crossed, hopefully. We've got 20 people who pulled it.
Wow.
Now, this is with the wooden bridge that we're talking about?
The timber structure.
Is that a timber structure? Can I ask a quick, Mr.
Go
Chair,
ahead.
if I may?
Absolutely.
We were talking about that. Has anybody contacted the EPA and the Superfund fight with respect to they were gonna put,
Helical pots.
yeah,
Yep.
okay. Did they have any issues with that?
They said they did not have any issues with it as long as the soil was not being extracted and taken out.
But it was
of the
okay
road.
for them to go through the soil, but not extract it? Okay, all right. Okay. That was a question that was asked, I mean, I did not know, so, okay, thank you.
Okay. Any other discussion on our priority project list?
Well,
Strategic plan,
You
he
gotta
hasn't answered yet.
Oh.
yeah, I'm still,
Let's not forget about the
I think
Or
as
do you
Rob
still have
pointed
more
out,
downtown?
it's very, very important. We just, we're still working on the housing section, so,
Yeah.
it's, again, as issues come up, the more long-term stuff gets put off for the more acute stuff,
Immediate,
so.
Well, the other thing, I just wanted to, we've talked about the parcel analysis. Is that something that is part of this, or should we look at another?
It should be,
way
and
of
I
doing
think it's
that?
also important that we don't necessarily, we coordinate with other organizations that are, and committees that are doing plans as well. So
Right.
we don't wanna have a strategic
Right.
plan that talks about open space parcels and priority for open space parcels that is different than the open
Exactly.
space and
Space plan.
recreation
So
plan.
good segue. So while Roberta's in the room, I'd like to, at some point very soon, have the Open Space Committee come back to the board with just a review and an update from your committee?
On the plan and.
Good.
yeah. Okay.
Okay, Michael?
I think that's
good?
it on the,
Okay.
that stuff.
All right, Susan, can you put up the consent agenda for us? And
Just re-wiggled.
And we took one out, right?
we removed the
Doing it on purpose.
surplus.
The surplus? Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So the consent agenda has been listed. We have pulled the Claire 433 Chestnut Street as surplus property from that. I will entertain a motion to accept the consent agenda.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? That carries 5-0.
Just wanted to thank KG for buying us a freezer for vaccines. I
Yes.
mean,
Yeah.
that's pretty important, so good
Nice.
for him.
Very
Yeah.
nice. Thank you, KG.
So what I'd like to do is go out of order a little bit, because I know there's folks here for the Eversource update, so we'll do that one now. And I don't know if we want to wait for Karen, I think she just left the room for a minute, but I think, one comment that I will make is the quality of the document that Chuck and Lynn, Marty, and Diane and Roberta were involved with putting together. I thought it was an exceptionally well-done document, so, and I believe has it been part, I know you recommended it to be part of our reply brief?
Yes, so I've directed Brian to include pieces of that analysis as part of the reply brief, but then also attach it as the whole document as an appendix and refer to it throughout as well.
Good.
Which he was totally fine with. He agreed in terms of the quality of the document. It really is excellent.
Yeah.
Diane had been telling me for a while that she's putting something together. It's got all this data, and she's like, just wait. And I was like, I was pretty impressed.
Yeah,
when I
yeah,
saw
very
it.
impressive, so well done. So tomorrow, and I'll turn it over to Michael in a second, but our reply brief is due tomorrow, the 6th.
Yeah, due tomorrow, close of business. Again, it's gonna, really the aim of the reply brief is to answer some of the claims made and positions taken in terms of Eversource's initial brief. So it's designed to challenge a lot of those and argue against those. So I hope to have a copy of it later tonight. Obviously, part of the issues that we have with this process is it's very constrained in terms of time. So Brian's going to be working the midnight oil, so we will be. We should see a copy of it later tonight. It doesn't give us much time to turn it around if we have any changes, but I was pretty clear with Brian in terms of the things that we want to highlight in terms of challenging the need, both from a global perspective and a more local perspective, and then also the lack of information, again, on a more bigger scale in terms of, the lack of information related to the project necessity, but then also lack of information related to the individual routes. And we've already determined that with the preferred route, there's a lot of things that are wrong, outstanding in their application. And then on the alternative route, there's just no information, so to speak, which to make a comparison, so.
And the other item, Michael, was that clear that what the town's position
Yes.
was. In his initial brief, he had talked about listening to the public, which of course is important, but the fact is that this board voted for a certain standing, and that he should be clear on that.
That's a very good point. I think the initial brief did bifurcate a little bit.
Yeah.
Town residents and government in terms
Exactly.
of positions. And I have made it clear that those should be more together, more continuous or contiguous.
Yeah.
So.
The only other thing I would add is we should think about, as this process continues, if we need to invest some funds in really having an energy expert who will really look at a technical analysis as we move along in this process to directly challenge their analysis. Somebody who's been involved in these kind of energy issues as an industry expert, so.
Just as an aside, some of the information that I received from Donna Sharkey, who's the presiding officer, she does not anticipate the board taking a vote on this until the fall.
Okay.
Again, Eversource's reply brief, I believe, is due June 20th. So I do see them taking the summer to determine what to do on this.
Okay. All right, and I guess at this point, once all the reply briefs are in, it's a question of monitoring the docket.
Yep. Making sure that.
Okay.
Can I just say one quick thing?
Sure.
I just wanted to say that I thought that the initial brief that Brian wrote was really well written. I think he did a really great job balancing sort of the questioning of the need with the mitigating position, for the town, and I think that was a really good balance to strike. So I feel like, I think that I look forward to the next reply brief.
It's
Okay.
definitely under the gun, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so moving on, Select Board meeting dates for July and August. And typically, we do one meeting, or we schedule one meeting for July and August. There's been many times, I think over the years, all of us have been at 2 or more meetings, so, but we need to schedule at least one for July and August, so any preferred dates?
So the ones that are recommended for August are both Saturdays? The 10th
What's your,
Okay.
what's your problem with that?
Well, I'm like, okay, are we looking to do a retreat on one of those days? But typically, we do a retreat a little bit sooner,
Yeah. Yeah.
so.
Can I just make one comment?
Yes, that was both July.
So on July, I put in the 24th in anticipation of an application for alcohol that may come before you. And I'm gonna be on vacation the end of June, and then I'm gonna be away one of the weeks in July, so I was trying to do it around my schedule, but if that doesn't work for you, it's fine, but that's why I kind of put in that date without a question mark. Certainly, you can move it, I don't have to be there, but I just wanted to make you aware.
July 24th.
So July 24th? So normally, we wouldn't schedule on the 3rd of July, obviously, but we would schedule the next.
17th.
Right, so
either-
with the,
that's
with
right.
the holiday, that
Yeah.
will kind of mess up the schedule with getting a legal ad in, that's why I was kind of looking to move it off to the 24th.
Are we concerned, though, that the school committee would be meeting on the 24th, because that's their
They
date?
don't traditionally meet in July and August, but I'm happy to check with them, but they usually take the summer off.
Okay, any conflicts on the board for
Think so.
time off and being away?
I'm usually.
We
I'm
got
here.
no life,
Not
so.
for the
we're
24th, so.
I'm here
Okay.
anyway.
We're away in August, like the,
Okay, so does the 24th work?
As long
For
as school
folks?
committee isn't meeting, yeah.
Okay, so we'll schedule the 24th of July. And August, was there a recommendation? So the first
So the first
Wednesday.
Wednesday is the 7th,
Yeah,
and then the third Wednesday is the 21st.
21st. So my suggestion is we'll schedule the 24th. If for some reason we need to meet on the 17th, we should leave that open.
July
And then
17th is the Saturday, you mean
Yeah.
July 17th?
July 17th,
July
right?
Okay.
Yeah,
And
that's
then-
Thursday.
August the 7th, first Wednesday, we should schedule, and then as a backup date for any business that might
14th?
come up, we would to
21st.
do the 21st.
21st,
Right.
okay.
So right now, we would schedule the 24th and the 7th as our meeting dates for July and August.
Okay,
All right? We
if
good?
needed.
No,
No,
those will
those
be
are
our
Will be our
two.
dates.
Those will be
If
the dates.
needed, it would be the 17th
17th,
and
okay.
then the 21st, right?
You
That
don't have any
that good?
business.
Okay.
Wouldn't it make sense to do the 24th of July and the 21st of August? And then if we need to meet earlier in August, because that way it's a month, rather than a month and then 2 weeks? Just direct, I don't know,
I
just a
don't know, we have meetings
suggestion.
every 2 weeks anyway.
Well, I know that, but we have them scheduled every 2 weeks,
Yeah.
but we're looking to just make one in July and one in August.
Yeah.
We can always schedule them, and if we don't need them, we can always.
Okay, just,
Yeah. So we'll have a couple placeholders, and we'll have a couple of meetings posted.
Okay.
All right? Okay, so that's that. Second, next is the announce Select Board Scholarship recipients. And I'll turn that over to Yolanda and Joe as our subcommittee.
I was gonna do this as a board report, but if you wanna do it now, we can do that.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
no,
It's on
let's
the
do
agenda.
it. Let's
Okay.
do it.
Well, we had many wonderful applicants apply, and it wasn't an easy decision, but those that were chosen, we had Jessica Rose and Kevin Rabineau from the class of 2019. And because of the work that they have done within the community, and their community service effort was outstanding. And that's what this is about, is a community service award and recognition. So they met all the criteria. And one of the things we try to do is to make sure that there aren't multiple awards being given to the same individual, to try to spread the wealth out. And as of the day that we did the application, neither one of those individuals had received anything. And then day of graduation, it came out that two of them, the two that we chose.
both got other
they
things.
But they both got other things.
Oh.
So, but we're not aware of that. I mean,
Yeah.
but the day of the application that we did it, when we contacted the school, they had not received anything as of that date.
Yeah.
So, I don't know if we have to look at something and try to tweak that process. Maybe we do so. I don't know how we do it, but it's something we should be looking into.
Very good. How many applications did you get?
The total,
20,
20, yeah, it wasn't as much as we had in the past.
Yeah.
It was, I think we had like 21, and 4 of them were from Keefe Tech.
Yeah, which was the first time
Yeah,
we'd had
in
any
quite
from
some
Keith
time.
Tech.
Very
Yeah.
good. That's great. That's
Yeah.
great. Well,
So-
thank you for your work as
Oh,
a subcommittee and.
Congratulations to the recipients. I know
Yeah, and
they
to all the
did some good work.
graduates of the class
Yeah.
of 2019
Yeah.
from the class of East Patterson High School, New Jersey, 1967. So
Oh,
you can do
boy.
the math.
Wow.
Are we all gonna tell our high school classes, or?
I think I will skip that one.
Just a
Class of
little,
73, we were the 100th graduating class,
yeah.
so,
For Ashland.
for Ashland High, yeah,
That's interesting.
Oh.
A
What
very-
was the scholarship amount?
1,000.
1,000 each, yeah.
Okay.
All right, our next agenda item, discuss and vote on changing the name of Board of Selectmen to Select Board or a gender-free name. So just a couple comments before we get started. I've been referring, personally, I've been referring to our board, and so has Rob, I think, for most of the past year as the Select Board, and that's, you can tell where my head is at. But, you know, I just want to reflect on further on what Karen talked about earlier. When you look at government from, you know, the federal level all the way down, you've got president. I mean, everything is gender neutral until you get to this level of government. So I think it's certainly about time that we make an official change. I think, you know, we need to agree on the process if that's the direction we go in. But just as an aside, I just want to point out that 100 years ago, yesterday, the 19th Amendment was passed. What's the 19th Amendment?
Affirmed by
That's right.
Congress.
So
It
that
didn't-
was 100 years ago that it was passed. So it's kind of the timing is
100 years.
a
Oh,
good,
that's interesting.
you know, there's I guess a synchronicity here. So I will open it up for discussion.
Should I just review the resolution and the
Sure.
proposal? So
Yeah.
this is what.
That's
this is
fine, and
what-
then
yeah.
we'll open it up for discussion.
So, Steve, we had discussed this somewhat before, and we're, you know, trying to deal with some of the, kind of the technicalities of it, but
Excuse me a second. I am gonna leave the board for a minute. You review
Sure.
the
We're not
document
taking a
and
vote without
then
you,
start
though,
the
yeah. Yeah.
discussion. I'll be
all right. So, this resolution is, basically has 3 parts to it, because, in talking about changing the title of the, Board of Selectmen and Selectmen, it has some legal, usage, and requirements in some places, so we have to do a little bit of, review of that. So this resolution allows for that, and it's basically 3 parts. One is the use of the term in everyday usage or in common usage, and then further on changing legal documents such as town bylaws and regulations. So for those of you who don't have it in front of you, the resolution on gender-neutral titles referring to the Ashland Board of Selectmen reads as follows. The following measures are hereby resolved. 1, use of terms effective immediately. Ashland's governing board will be referred to as the Ashland Select Board and members as Select Board member. The presiding officer of the board shall be referred to as chair. These terms shall be used in correspondence and communications of all types, in public address, and on the town letterhead. Exceptions to this practice will be made only for documents or communication which require the use of the legal terms selectmen or board of selectmen. 2, town bylaws and regulations. To further enact this change in terms, the town manager is directed to prepare a warrant article or articles containing appropriate changes to bylaws and other relevant municipal regulations for consideration at the next town meeting. 3, charter. The next charter committee is hereby directed to reflect these gender-neutral terms in the next revision of the town charter. So that is the resolution which has been proposed for tonight, and, you know, I'm hopeful that we can pass it, tonight and, you know, move on with this. So that's my, proposal on this.
With that, we can open it up to discussion or comments on the resolution. Joe or Brandy? Or
So I just
Michael?
recognized
Yeah, I just wanted to make a couple comments. I think, just after checking with some people, I think all parts of the resolution from a legal perspective are fine, except the last part in terms of the Board of Selectmen directing the Charter Review
Yeah, I
Committee to
suppose
come
you're
back
right
with
about
something.
that.
Charter Review Committee, the next one might not even come back with a recommendation for a board, town meeting form of government.
Right.
So, I mean, certainly it's within your purview to reject whatever they come back with, but,
Well, should we, instead of the word directed, we should say urged?
recommend, or yeah,
It's
urge.
hereby urged, or, and I'd accept that change.
Or review.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, just think you want to check, is this even on? Okay. Thanks, Miles. No, I think you should probably look at rephrasing Section 3, or number 3, to talk about urging the Charter Review Committee
Okay,
as opposed
so-
to directing.
So we could just change directed instead of directed, hereby directed to hereby urged to reflect these gender-neutral terms in the next revision.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. So, Brandy,
Sure, I can.
we'll go around the block.
Okay. So my thoughts on this have kind of evolved over time. Months ago, Yolanda and I sat down for coffee one day, and she asked me my thoughts on the name of the board, and I had said, well, you know, I was kind of neutral on it. And my response to her was, I feel like we need to make sure we have more women and diversity on the board necessarily than what it might be called. And then as I started the process of running for office and talking to people, I talked to a lot of people, and I talked to a lot of women, a lot of parents, not just women, but a lot of people that are raising girls. And it's very, very clear to me that what we call ourselves matters. As a leadership of town, it matters. And, you know, going back to 1846, when the board was first started, it really was before women had the right to vote. So it really was a board of select men. And this is the only board in town that is not gender neutral. So we have a school committee, we have a board of health, we have a planning board, and then we have the selectmen. And I don't want to be a woman that serves on the board of selectmen despite the name. I want it to be reflective of the inclusiveness and the diversity that our town really aspires to and really embraces. So as I've talked to a lot of women, a lot of people, I did a poll when I was running for office. I sent out a poll every week. One of the questions I said was, do you support a name change? And 81% of the people that responded to me said yes. And no one was really opposed to it. That was the thing. Some people thought, well, maybe, maybe not. But no one I really talked to was really opposed to the name. So, and we've received emails this week and the last couple weeks about the name change. I think that the passion and the thoughts are, you know, and especially what Karen was saying earlier, I think it matters. I think what we call ourselves as a leadership of Ashland matters. So I wholeheartedly support changing the name to the Select Board. I don't love the name Select Board, but I think it is what has, you know, Ashland isn't going to be the first town to call itself the Select Board, and we're not going to be the last. So I think that is it's a good, it's not a lovely title, but it's a good compromise, and I think it's a gender neutral one that we can support and feel good about as a board.
I don't think we can legally call ourselves a council at this point. That's a separate form of town government, so it's not as simple as saying town council and council person and so on. So we're stuck with the word select. And so I think it seems to me select board is probably you know, as best that we can do at this point, unless we change our form of government, which, you know, you were
I'm
seem
not
to be
advocating,
for.
I'm not
but,
advocating for that, I'm just saying, so, others might, but.
All right, so, who wants to go next, Joe or Yolanda?
Joe can go.
Really?
Yep.
Well, you're not gonna get the last word, so.
I know I'm not, but that's okay.
Well, that conversation I had with Yolanda, way before anybody was talking about changing the names, and I said, you know, Hockington was going through it, and that's when I first was made aware that maybe somebody who was sitting on the board felt slighted. And I asked Yolanda, do you feel slighted that we use the word selectmen instead of select board or whatever when it comes to it? And she thought about it for a second. She says, no, she said, it's what I do for work. It's what we do, you know, as a board that's involved. I don't care what you call me. And I said, okay, but, you know, to be gender neutral, I guess my question would be for those that are sitting here. I don't have a problem changing this to select board, but individually, are you a select woman? Are you a select man? When we refer to each other, because that was a conversation that was brought up at our last meeting. It was, are you a select man or are you a select woman? When we're referred to, when we call the chair. And, well, you're a select person. Well, yeah, but I'm not neutral-gender, I'm a male. You're not neutral-gender, you're a female. Are we sliding either sex for the fact that we don't want to slight somebody, so we'll just say select person? To me, it doesn't matter. What matters to me the most is what we do for work and what we accomplish as a board. I don't care what you want to call us. Call us elders, although we've got all young people here, except 305.
That's a good one.
However, but.
Call us elders.
Yeah, you know, it's a matter of respect, it's a matter of respect for those people who, if we remember what their elders were in the community, they were the people that were there, and they were looked up to and were asked their opinions or asked for advice. So, I don't care what you call me. I just care about getting the work done and doing it well.
Yeah, I think you're 100% on in terms of, what our real work and purpose is. To me, this is an easy lift and an easy change, and I don't think we should belabor it extensively at all. You know, I think we're prepared to, once we finish our discussion, prepared to move on and make a decision one way or the other. But one thing, we're not advocating for is going back and rewriting history. So it's not a question of, changing, as an example, changing the board that's in the back of the room. I would not advocate for that.
I wouldn't advocate it either.
So,
Same here.
but
This is
that's.
a moving forward
Right,
kind of thing.
that's right. So, that being said, Yolanda?
So it's been interesting, this whole discussion, and I appreciate the input that people have given us, certainly via email and comments. I understand the desire for a gender-neutral term for our board. And as a woman, I feel I have been fortunate to not feel like I can't do something because of the name of a position or board. And I don't know if it's because how I was raised or what I do or what, but I've always felt like it doesn't matter what the title is that I'm going for. If it's something I want to do, I'm going to run. But the discussion about the change of the name is not about me or even about the fact that there are now 2 women sitting on this board. As a community, we're feeling like we want a more gender-neutral name. That being said, I'm not really sold on the name Select Board, but I'm willing to give it a try. But as was said, maybe we need to think outside the box and try town councilors or commissioner. Look at what that legal ramification is. And I'm not saying town council as in a lawyer, but town councilors. It's spelled differently. It's a slightly different term. I feel that is also gender neutral. I understand that other people in other towns have decided to use select board. I don't know that I want to be a select board member. I don't like the way that sounds, but I'm willing to give this a try, but I feel like we need to do this one step at a time. I feel like the resolution that was sent to us and proposed, I feel like it's too much all at once. Certainly the third part regarding the charter. I don't think we should direct them or suggest or in anything like that. What is interesting to me is we just had a 2.5 year, how long process in our charter review.
5 years.
And
I was on it.
and I don't believe, and maybe I missed something, that during any of that discussion, a name change for the Board of Selectmen came up, that I'm aware of. And we have 2 members of the Charter Commission who spent that time. We have the chair,
she's
the
the chair.
past chair of the committee and someone who was on it. So, again, if enough people feel like this is important, then I think we should move forward. But I don't think we should pass the resolution as stated. I think we can go with number 1 in regards to gender-neutral terms and work with Select Board. But for the other 2, I believe we should wait.
So, with respect to that, and I'll ask both of you, do you have a problem being called select woman?
No.
Okay, because I know that when we're sitting at this table, and the chair says, okay, select woman Kinsman, would you like to comment? We're kinda informal, we call up, we use first names.
Yeah.
You know, but when we have to be formal, is it select woman? Would you have an issue with select woman? Would you have a
No,
problem with
I've
select
been
woman? I
called
don't
that.
have
I
a problem with
respond to that.
select woman because that's what I am, I'm a man. But I'm also on this board, it's select board, but
I would say, I would take it as sort of how people refer to police officers. The
Yep.
title is a police officer, but if
Yep.
somebody's a policeman, that they're a policeman or a policewoman. People have said to me, what do I call you? Because people don't know what to call me because I'm on the Board of Selectmen.
Yeah.
So I'm like, you can call me a select woman.
yeah, you're a select woman.
fine with that.
And that's how I look
Yep.
at it. I mean, maybe I'm looking at it totally wrong. Maybe I'm archaic or a
And-
dinosaur, I've been
And
called that
I
before
guess
too.
for me,
Quiet.
in regards to, as, now if we say, okay, we're on the select board, which, okay, gender neutral, and I understand that, but select board member Mitchell, I don't know that works, but I'm willing to give it a try if people
All
wanna
right,
do
so it
that.
sounds like we have consensus in terms of moving in that direction. I see a hand raised, so I'll recognize you just a second. But, so let's take a vote on that piece.
What piece?
The piece of changing, actually, let me
Well,
take that
before-
back. Let me take that back.
Yeah.
Let's next talk about the resolution and how we want to address that and treat it. So
Yeah.
why don't you speak to that, but let's let Rob
sure.
talk for a second.
Just real quick, in my career, I dealt with lots of boards of directors, and they referred to themselves as a member of the board of directors. And this is corporations of billions of dollars, whatever. You're the executive board of this town. And I think select is as archaic as a gender thing, and I would strongly urge you to call yourself the executive board and members of the executive board. That's my 2 cents. Thanks.
Thank you.
Can I try, Mr. Chairman?
Hold on a second, Mark.
Mr. Chair. Sorry.
Can you, why don't you speak about the
Chair.
resolution? Just
Well,
respond to the concerns
sure.
about that and see how
So,
we can move,
yeah.
move
So
it forward.
I think it's important that this resolution be passed in its entirety because it lays out, we've really kind of delayed long enough, and there's been a number of other boards that have moved forward with this terminology, and it hasn't been a big issue. I think, in regards to what anybody calls themselves in their own personal communication, if you choose to want to call yourself a selectman or a select woman, that's fine. This doesn't prohibit that. This talks about what is our official communication as a community? What terms do we use as a community to talk about our governing body, and how do we address them in official terms? And, it affects probably this town staff and the town communications as a whole more than any particular individual. So if Yolanda wants to refer to herself as select woman, that's gonna be her concern, and people can evaluate that and what they think of it and what the message is there. But that would be her choice. This doesn't prohibit that because there's frankly no enforcement here. If people choose to ignore it, they do so at their own responsibility. The other thing is, you know, we do need to set out a process for changing the town bylaws and regulations in an official way, and also that was a good point about the Charter Commission. It, for whatever reason, never occurred to them to review this term. But now we are saying as the official governing body, you should review this term. And so that's why I think it's important that this resolution be passed in its entirety to make a definitive statement on
ask
this,
you-
and to not delay any further, frankly.
Can I ask you, because I'm supportive of moving this
Yeah.
forward, can I ask you how you derived the resolution and the
Just-
process? Because it conforms really with the conversation that I had with town council in terms of the
Yeah.
process.
Well, I think you and I and Michael had talked, and we also have the experience of other boards, and so this is kind of the
Other people were
process.
standing there, Mark, so you need to
No,
go
but
with
I
that.
Would
spoke
you,
first.
Mark,
No.
please, sit down, you'll be recognized. You will be recognized.
So this is just a process that was suggested in our discussions about this, and, you know, what other towns have done. And I think it's really kind of fairly straightforward, and we, you know, I don't really see the need to continue delay our adjustments, or, you know, and if the time comes when this is not seen as being effective, we want to change it to something else, fine. But I'm kind of leery about continuing delay, because we brought this up probably a year ago and didn't really move forward until I decided, well, we got to stop procrastinating on this. We just need to do it, I think, so.
All right, so we'll continue the board discussion, but Karen,
I just want to strongly urge you, particularly the two of you, not to go with these gendered terms of select men and select women. The whole idea here is when you're running for office and the kids see your signs all over town, we don't want them to see selectmen. We want them to see a gender-neutral term. So I'm asking you not to use selectmen and select woman. Find something else. If you don't like select board, call yourself something else that's gender-neutral. I get the selector thing. I don't like it either.
we really need to move this along. I'm not trying to shut you down, but we've got to, it's almost 10 o'clock. We've got a lot of business to do. So I think we pretty well know where you stand on this. Roberta and then Mark.
Just want to clarify a couple of small things about what happened at the Charter Review Committee with regard to this. We never got any feedback from anybody about wanting to change the name. The only person who spoke to us about any gender-neutral issue in the entire charter was Tara Ward, who wanted references to the town clerk to be gender-neutral because it was previously he throughout. So we changed all pronoun references to be gender-neutral. And that was the only thing that was brought up to us. It was never, we sought public input, we sought input from all the existing boards and committees, and nobody ever brought it up. So it wasn't an issue when we were doing our work.
Okay, thank you.
The other thing I just want to remind you is that, I think somebody already said it, but town council is a different, or city council is a different form of government. You can't use that. So you may be limited as to what choices you have.
Yeah, thank you. Mark?
Okay.
And I'm going to need to ask you to be very brief here because we do need to move on.
Let's bring it by, okay, I'll be brief, and I'll bring it right up to the vote to go past 10. In the title, Board of Selectmen should be Select Board. Take out men and take out of, and then working from there. And because the charter is gotta have a last say as the town, and as it's being talked about, this is not Civil War time. It's something that is updated, should be moved on, and should be said. No matter it's man, woman, LGB, or whatever. It's a gender, political, correct way to go, so select board.
Good, thank you, Mark. I'll entertain at this point a motion to go beyond 10 o'clock.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And then I think it's time to, as they say, call the vote. And
I'll make a motion then to approve the resolution that I read with the change that the Charter Committee is hereby urged to reflect these gender-neutral terms in the next revision. So with that change.
So I have a motion,
I'll second that.
I have a second. Any other comments before we vote?
So I just want to say, I support the name Select Board, and certainly Part 2 of this resolution to start looking forward. But I think in the resolution to have anything related to telling the Charter Commission, even if it's urging them something, is inappropriate as part of the resolution.
Okay. So we have a motion, we have a second. All those in favor of the motion?
Is he willing to make an amendment to his motion?
Should we just remove number 3?
Well, no, because I wouldn't like to, because I think it's, as Roberta just said, no one made any comments to the Charter Committee, but now we're making a comment as the governing body and taking an official stance. I think it's important.
Yeah, and I would agree, and again, it was as part of the process as laid out with my discussion with town council, that would ultimately be, the final piece.
Except what if, when the next Charter Commission gets appointed and they start looking at this, they, as Michael said, recommend a different form of government?
So then we'll deal with it at that
But
point in
then
time.
why are we urging them to reflect, gender-neutral terms?
That's what we know right now. I mean, it may, if it changes in the future, changes in the future. But I think at this point, we have this is our form of government, and that's part of the process, so.
Just
I'm
a
gonna-
point of interest. We make this change tonight. It doesn't happen tonight. It has to go to town meeting vote.
So.
Oh, yes, it
will go-
does.
Nobody's
Rob,
arguing with you, Joe.
no, Rob's
It will-
shaking
Oh,
his
I'm
head
sorry.
no.
It will
But
go-
you're right, to the part that talks about town meeting
But
is number
we're
2 does,
taking a
right.
position as a board
I
tonight.
understand that,
That's what
but
we're
until
doing.
town meeting votes it, we're still a select.
Well, no, we can decide to
well,
start moving forward with Select
Okay,
Board,
yeah.
and my recommendation is we do that, if this vote goes through. I just, again, have the issue with this resolution about the charter, that's all.
Okay, so noted. So we've got a motion, we've got a second. All those in favor?
I'd like to make an amendment to that we take away number 3, Article 3. I'm all for 1 and 2, but I still have an issue being on the charter. Granted, nobody said anything, it's brought up now, but at the same token,
So
that may not-
you're making a motion to amend the resolution?
Yes.
Is there a second on that?
Second.
Okay, we're gonna take a vote on that. All
On the
those-
amendment.
On the amendment. So all those in favor of the amended motion, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
No.
No. So the amendment does not pass.
Okay.
So now we'll take a vote on the original motion. And all those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed?
No.
No.
So that carries 3-2. And so at this point, we will be referring to ourselves as the Select Board.
Only unofficially, because on any official documentation, it still has to be Board of Selectmen.
Well, I'm not sure that's true. No, only when it's legally required.
And I think that's what Yolanda,
I think,
you can have
letterhead.
our
select
regular
board.
letterhead, we
Yeah.
can start to make that change, so, okay.
So,
Thank you.
I just want to make one recommendation, or make a suggestion. Sometimes what happens is when there's a split vote, and, one side, for lack of a better term, loses, sometimes there's another vote, like a reconsideration vote, to show unanimity. I think on some votes that are important like this, that might be something you want to consider, not putting any pressure on anybody to do
Yeah.
that, but.
Well, I
just
certainly
think that
would
would certainly
consider
be-
it, I mean, and I've never, it's known as a reconsideration vote,
Yeah.
basically, so, I would.
Usually you do it when you're like split on a vote on who you're gonna hire as town manager. And like,
That could happen.
that could.
Yeah, yeah, I certainly, would entertain a motion for a reconsideration of vote. I don't know if it's that important in this particular
Okay.
case. I think, we have a difference of opinions here, and I think that's okay.
And it's not a
Right.
difference
No
of
pressure.
opinion with respect to
Right,
the
we-
name of the
we-
board.
we
No, I know,
respect,
but
you
the
know,
process.
We're willing
Yeah.
to do Select Board.
Yeah.
It's just the other part of the resolution,
The
that's all.
process, I get it. But that's okay, that's,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
Okay, so moving on to our next agenda item is the authorization of the clerk of the board to sign documents associated with the Ashland Capital Plan bonds. So, Mr. Town Manager?
Yes, so this is a very straightforward request of the board. This relates to the $9,286,000 in bonds that were recently authorized. The main, really, this is almost like a little bit of cleanup, because the fire truck and modular classrooms under Mass General laws are only allowed to be borrowed over a length of 5 years. That can be amended with the vote of the Board of Selectmen to something that's more consistent with their useful life. And in both of these cases, we're recommending 15 years. So,
And that's the recommended lifespan
of the modulars and the
okay.
fire truck.
Okay.
So, what I would request is on the vote of the Board of Selectmen page, if just want to make sure that you have it, under the voted section, and then under the columns where it says maximum useful life, it would be 15 years. And I would
Both
just,
of them?
for both of them, yes. And I would ask that you so vote.
Can I ask a question not
Absolutely.
quite relevant to this? Michael, there is a, and you probably are aware of this, a program through MAPC where they can help you purchase?
A regional procurement, like
Yeah,
a joint
the-
procurement program?
Well, no, it's specifically for fire trucks.
But usually I think they're part of a collaborative.
I don't know for sure. I think they have some, I could be wrong, but I was just at a recent meeting and they talked about that was one of the programs that they had, was to help municipalities. I could be regional, but if we could
And
just
that's
double
fine,
check it.
if it's regional.
But I'm
and
not, I think it could just be something for Ashland.
We'll look into it,
Okay.
definitely.
Okay.
Michael, quick question. Are these for bonds that are currently, that we currently have, or for bonds going forward?
The ones that we just issued.
Okay.
So this is really cleanup in terms of
So is it the paper vote of the Board of Selectmen that has to get read?
where it says voted. And,
Okay.
All right, any other discussion regarding this agenda item? If not, entertain a motion to authorize the clerk.
You get to read
I
it.
get to read it now, huh? Wow. Okay, the vote of the Board of Selectmen. I, the clerk of the Board of Selectmen of the Town of Ashland, Massachusetts, certify that at the meeting of the board held on June 5th, 2019, of which meeting all members of the board were duly notified, and at which of a quorum was present, the following vote was unanimously passed, all of which appears upon the official record of the board in my custody. Voted that the maximum useful life of the departmental equipment listed below to be financed within the proceeds of the $1,321,000 portion of the borrowing authorized by the vote of the town passed on May 1st, 2019, which was Article 4, is hereby determined pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 41, Section 7-1, Paragraph 1, to be as follows. Purpose: Warren School Modulars, borrowing amount $711,000, maximum useful life of 15 years. Fire pumper truck, $610,000 with a maximum useful life of 15 years. I further certify that the vote was taken at a meeting open to the public, and that the vote not taken by secret ballot, that notice stating that the place, date, time, and agenda of the meeting, which agenda included the adoption of the above vote, was filed with the town clerk, and a copy therefore posted in a manner conspicuously visible to the public at all hours in or during a municipal building at the time of the office of the town clerk is located, or if applicable, in accordance with the alternative method of notice prescribed or approved by the Attorney General as set forth in 940 Chapter CMR 29.03, Paragraph 2, Subsection B, at least 48 hours, not including Saturdays, Sundays, and legal holidays, prior to the time of the meeting, and remain so posted at the time of the meeting that no deliberations or decisions in connection with the subject matter of this vote were taken in executive session, all in accordance with Mass General Law, Chapter 38, Section 18-25, as amended. Date, June June 5th, 2019. And I'll be signing as the clerk of the Board
Second.
of...
Okay, that was a mouthful.
It was.
We're ready to vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? None, so that carries 5-0. Very good. Next item on the agenda
Which we need.
is
No, we need
our
to change that, though.
review of the transfers, fiscal year 19 transfers.
So, I think Brittany has put together a memo and provided it to both you and the Finance Committee. So under Chapter 44, Section 33B, if we want to make transfers between line items and departments at the end of the year, we have to do it through a vote of the Board of Selectmen with the concurrence of the Finance Committee. We did a little bit opposite this year, just because of the way the meeting dates fell. FinCom voted, met last night and voted to approve these transfers. I think it's pretty self-explanatory. I think Brittany did a really good job of, explaining what they're for. And, again, most of it is, again, moving money from the salary contingency that's, in the beginning of the year, established as part of the budget, into, different personnel based on, COLA adjustments or settling of union contracts, et cetera. So, anyway, I would just ask that you, the total transfers are $405,000, and I would just ask that you so vote.
Okay, any discussion on this request? Okay, you're ready.
I move that we approve the fund transfer for year-end as requested and presented.
Second.
So motion is second, and without further discussion, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, 0, and that carries 5-0. Good. Good work, and thank Brittany for all
Yeah.
her
Very
work
nice.
as well,
Absolutely.
please. Last item under old new business is the appointment of Mead, Tellerman, and Costa LLC as town council for a term of 1 year beginning July 1st of 2019. As you recall, we just recently did their evaluation, and any comments?
No, I thought there was something a little bit more substantive as part of the vote. There's not. You just take the vote, and I provide an appointment letter that lets me tell them and Costa know that the Board of Selectmen, Select Board, voted on June 5th to appoint them for a 1-year term, starting July 1st.
Very good. So any discussion
The
regarding?
only
this
thing I would
appointment?
ask is, when will we have an update, legal law update with respect to what's going on? To actually help Randy, because, when she's new on the board, it would be nice to have her,
Yeah.
get an update on what's going on, so.
Let me see if I could have her come in August, maybe?
Sure.
Yeah, let's do that, and let's
But you're on
also-
vacation though,
No,
right?
I'm not when we are planning to meet.
Oh, okay. I just wanna make sure that you're available, that's
Yep.
all.
Also, Michael, I think we're due for another open meeting law seminar.
Mm.
Yes.
I've had some committee and board members talk about, concerns, fears of actually going out and having coffee together as a, because of concerns about it being
Maybe
a
they're
quorum
looking-
in the social situation, right?
Steve, maybe they're looking for an excuse not to have coffee.
Have coffee?
No, open meeting law, yeah. Just kidding.
But I think we're due for a seminar.
Agreed.
Very good.
You were gonna say?
Yeah, I'll wait. It's not relevant to
Okay.
this.
All right. So, if we have no further discussion on the appointment, I'll entertain a motion.
I move that we appoint Mead, Tallerman, and Costa as town council for the town of Ashland for a term that runs from July 1st, 2019 to June 30th, 2020.
I'll second it.
Very good. Motion and second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, 0, and that carries 5-0. So congratulations to Mead, Tallerman, and Costa LLC for another year of service to the community.
She can blow out the candle now, she got the job.
Okay.
All right. So we are at the point of town manager reports.
I don't have much, because I covered a lot of it under the priority projects updates.
Yeah.
I do have one thing to report. I did receive a call from Cesario at the Metro West Daily News.
Oh, yeah.
And he was calling me to inform me that the newspaper is changing the way it's approaching news. They're no longer having beat reporters associated with specific towns. So Ashland's not gonna have a beat reporter, Holliston's not gonna have a beat reporter. Instead, what they're moving is to a more topical format. And so Cesario's gonna be covering technology and in the environment. But I just wanted to give you a heads up that we'll probably see even less coverage on a regular basis.
It's really, obviously it's been a long-term trend with print newspapers and the evolution, the transition to digital. And so it is, a lot of ways it's disappointing that we don't have that kind of news media that is reporting on local activities. And, we've had, there's the directions were active at one time, local pages are still active, but those weren't real journalism vehicles. Those were public interest stories, right? So that lack of real journalism is unfortunate. And I think, unfortunately as well, that Facebook has become a de facto way of communicating events. And I think it's, probably the more dangerous ways that mechanism is used. And I would just encourage people to not use Facebook as a way of engaging in business related to the town. I urge everybody to call us, email us, come to town hall, not use Facebook as a way of venting or discussing an issue. Invariably, it becomes like that game we played in grade school, where you'd start here and you'd go around the end of the circle and it's a completely different story. So, I would just urge people to communicate.
And just to add on to that, Steve, we as a board have to be careful, as if people bring up issues that we then all read, we have to be really careful about commenting or putting our opinion or if we're putting out just straight information, we're fine, but if we're putting our opinion out on those public boards, we could be an open meeting law violation. If it's a comment that someone puts out there and we then comment personally, knowing that other members of the board are then reading our opinion and it's something we then have to discuss, it could be an issue for open meeting law.
Well, we should get that clarified, because I don't see why public elected officials can't comment on publicly, because that's what we're here for.
I think if we put facts out there.
If facts are fine, but if you're putting your opinion out and then someone else from the board puts their opinion out, it could be considered discussion.
That's an interesting point. I think we need to clarify that as a statewide issue.
I was just about to say that, and, one of the things I was going to bring up during board reports is our select board operating policies and procedures. Now, I know everybody else has these memorized, except for Brandy, which is most of them, and I have a copy for you.
Oh, good, okay.
Great,
But I just
exciting.
want to point out that this was approved in 2009. Now, 10 years later, the environment has changed dramatically. And there's nothing in here that speaks to social media as an example, so.
Well, that's
it
something we should bring up as a.
There should be something that, the town council reviews for us in terms of
How about
social
on
media.
our
Because I don't
retreat?
know,
Well, that's
I can't speak to what's right, what's wrong, when, regarding what Yolanda just says. It could be true, I don't know that at this point. We need more clarity on that. I did ask Lisa Lisa Yu to review this. She did this in her former life in Cohasset, and she has a copy of this. She's reviewing it, going to give us some recommendations that we can then start to dig in. And this might be a good kind of subcommittee thing to get into and come back to the board. But this,
I'll take that.
This is for you, so you'll have, you'll be tested next meeting.
But that was the one thing that I was gonna bring up is, so we've picked some meeting dates, but typically in either early June or mid-June, we do some kind of retreat where the new board can sit, review some of those things, sort of create our objectives tied into what we have objectives for the town manager, for the next year.
Yeah,
So.
I thought, and I'm glad you brought it up, because my thoughts were to defer a retreat to the fall, and then we can kind of dig in, let Brandy have a few meetings under her belt, and then we can get into, she's got a learning curve here.
Yep.
And, I think then we can dig into some substance.
Brand new member for a while, so
Yeah.
it's a lot.
And I have things that I, want to put in front of you guys too, so some ideas and things.
Yeah, and we do have, we've agreed on a very substantial list of priority projects
Right.
that we really need to continue to focus on and move forward. And it's not, and that includes, I know it's not listed here, but the trail, that's an important component.
Which
here,
one?
Obviously. You know which one. The quiet zone is still an important part of this,
Yeah.
right? So, but they're subsets of it.
Yeah, I just want to caution you. I mean, we do this a lot.
Yeah.
We set aside our agenda for the year and lay out a very ambitious plan. And even accomplishing what we want to accomplish within a year is not just ambitious, sometimes audacious.
Insane.
And through the course of the year, we pick up other things like EverSource, things of that nature. Some of that stuff you just can't avoid, but I really would advise that we finish up some of these things first before we take on.
I wasn't necessarily recommending new items, or
Okay.
I was more recommending the retreat, and I
As a
understand Steve
process,
maybe waiting a little bit so that Brandy can understand some of this. It's more to review what is being worked
Right.
on,
Okay.
review what the
Maybe
plans
like a
are.
check-in.
And give
And
Brandy
also
an
to give
update.
Brandy an update on the things that we as the current, the older board had talked about. Because she's saying that she has ideas of things that she wants to bring forward, but we need to talk about what we've been doing and how we can incorporate any new possibilities.
Kind of like a check-in.
Yeah.
As where are we with this?
Yeah.
I think we can manage the agenda to work, but again, I think it best get more immersed, I
But
think, at
is-
each meeting.
Is that something we could do sooner than later? I know you were talking about maybe in the fall, but is that something we could do to get Brandy up to speed with a lot of some of the things that she's not aware of sooner now? Maybe in late June or early July or sometime over the
have a
summer,
mini
when we don't
meeting
have a
setting
lot
again.
of stuff
Right.
going on, and
I'd
just,
be willing to do that.
I'm-
I
it just-
think that wouldn't be a bad idea. I think,
it would have helped me, and
Yeah.
I'll tell you, it just, a lot came along right away when I first got on, and it was just like, it was overwhelming, to be
Yeah.
very honest with you. So I'm sure you probably feel the same way, but when you slowly see these different things and how it works and why it works the way it does, you get a better understanding
Yeah.
for it, and maybe a better way to,
So you're attending the it's still called, what's the MMA new?
leadership, I think the leadership
And
conference
that's
they
on
call it.
Saturday,
That's Saturday.
this Saturday.
For newbie select board members.
yeah.
Don't
good.
call it boot camp?
No, they don't call it boot camp.
Because it's a combination they also have for returning select board
Selectmen.
members, selectmen.
Yeah, good,
So I'm
yeah.
excited to be.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's a
it's really
good, I've
good.
gone a
It's a
couple
good
times, it's
program.
good, good.
I
So
think the
let's,
timing lines up. This year we did our, goal-setting agenda in January, if I remember
Yeah.
correctly. If it wasn't January, it was February. Maybe we can do that to lay out the goals and objectives for the year, and then have a meeting in the summer as a check-in,
Check in
and
where
then that
we at.
way, any new members that are coming on from the May election can get on board. And then we'll meet again at the beginning of the year, and,
so we want to schedule this.
well, there's
best
your
time?
extra meeting in July and August.
Okay,
Well,
so,
that's one
so
of the two.
let's,
Yeah.
to
I
to
think we
your
should talk
point.
about, if you wanna do it on a weekend, or,
I think weekends are tough in the summer.
I'll provide the hot dogs.
Yeah, it's tough with the
It's gonna be
farmer's
tough
market
anytime.
and a
Steve
lot
has
of
appointment
activities,
almost every
so,
Saturday, and
let's talk about it. We talk about it
Yeah.
offline, we'll make
Yeah.
a proposal to
Yeah.
the board for sometime in July or August.
Just talking a few hours at night.
Yeah,
Yeah.
something like that.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
seems reasonable.
Yeah,
I
okay,
think it would be
sounds good.
helpful for Brandy to, I know you've done a
Okay.
lot of research and gotten yourself up to speed on some things,
But there's a lot that
there's
I'm
a lot
still-
going on,
yeah.
yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
So, Town manager, any other report?
Oh, I did want to ask a question about Cesario. So if he's no longer covering us and we no longer have a beat reporter, what is the process for us to be able to put things that are happening in Ashland in front of Metro West Daily News? Is there somebody that we contact? Is there a process in place?
In terms of things that are happening on the,
Yeah, so like, how do we let them know, like, as a PR mechanism, like what's happening?
so I think that's a good point. The communications, I mean, you can let me know if that's something that you want to get out. Usually, we talk about it at a meeting, it's something we want to talk about, and I can send it out to them. It does bring up the issue of maybe a more organized communication structure, and
He did say, when Cesara called me, I don't know if he called other, but
I
he
s- I
told me
spoke
about, his new role, and he did, I said, well, so is there a list of who's doing what? Because he had IT and
Yeah.
natural resources, which is good, but who's like doing, other stuff? So he said he would ask about a list like that.
yeah,
That
they'll
would
filter
be-
it at the news, so you'll send it to the news desk, or we'll send it to the news desk, and it gets,
Yeah.
it'll get
Well,
distributed.
if it ends up having to go that way, then we need to, as a board, figure out who that point person is going to be, instead of having everybody put everything in that they wanna be put in. You know what I'm saying, when it comes to.
It's almost like we have to approve some kind of press release that,
Yeah.
I don't, and
Yeah.
get that to the right person. I mean, I'm just thinking about the vote we
The
took
news
tonight
editor.
about the name being select board.
Yep.
So I'm sure if anyone's watching, it's getting posted on Facebook, but that does not get it into the newspaper
Yeah,
and an article.
let me investigate that and
Okay.
see what we
Yeah.
can do.
Well, they sent a
Interesting
letter out to
point.
all their subscribers, and I don't know if you got your letter, I got mine today in the
Not a
mail.
I'm not a
subscriber.
subscriber.
I
so-
am,
That's
and
one of the
not only
That's
did
one
they
of their
talk
That's
about.
the issue, that not
They,
enough people are
they talked
subscribing.
about what their change was in their philosophy, but they also talked about an increase in their rate.
Yeah.
And from going to $48.38 a month to $76 a month.
A
To
month?
get every day, to get
Every
daily
day,
delivery.
daily
Wow.
delivery.
One thing I would,
I do the digital, but it's
It's,
still not.
that's
Right.
crazy.
one thing I would suggest, like, these, go back to some of our earlier points. So Mike brings up the Cesario, but we end up going through all sorts of stuff. But, one thing, I think this kind of journalism does merit local support. So I used to have a paper subscription and just recently stopped it, but, I'm gonna do a digital subscription, which I think works pretty well. So people who don't wanna do the paper anymore, I would strongly suggest you look at the digital subscription, and at least that's a way of, and I think they do, the Metro West News does perform an important service here that
I
is
agree.
not replaced by other news sources, and I hope they're gonna be able to continue doing it.
Yeah, same here.
Well, it's a test, it's a pilot program, is what Cesaro said to me.
His
And, right,
organization.
and it'll be, they'll evaluate it in a couple of months to see if it's doing what they thought it would do.
Well, it's
And if not, then they'll go back to their old.
It's a tough,
Well,
they're in a tough
It may not be a
position.
sustainable
Yeah.
model
May
at this
not be,
point.
it may not,
That's-
because it
that's
doesn't
the
sound like
challenge.
it's going to
Yeah.
be, but
Okay.
I'm not a newsman.
Let's
What do I
move
know?
on to board reports if town manager is done. So I think we'll defer to our newest member to start board reports.
Sure. So the first thing was that we all took part in the Memorial Day services and parade, which was great. It was a really wonderful first event with the group. Steve took an awesome selfie of the group, so thank you for that. It was good to walk with you guys. And a really great event. That was the first time I had participated in the Memorial Day services, so I really appreciate the effort and the ceremony around it as well. It was great. Last Thursday, I was with Jen Ball and Beth Reynolds at Exile on Main Street, which was a conference in Boston focused on economic development and creative solutions around empty storefronts. So there were a couple of really great panels. Lowell's doing some really interesting things. And they had people that were developers, that were from like the Boston, what used to be the Boston Redevelopment Authority. Some really creative solutions. Beth did a great job talking about Corner Spot and sort of how that evolved and what we brought to Ashland. She had lots of people come up to her afterwards. And Lowell is doing their Kerouac Park, which is really modeled after Corner Spot. So Corner Spot's taking over the world, so, which is good. I was at the ABA meeting last night, and it was great. They gave away 2 $1,500 scholarships. Congratulations to David Salatka and Justin Madison, who were the recipients this year. One's going to UConn and one's going to St. Michael's. So congratulations to them. And I just wanted to give a plug to the Friends of the Upper Charles Trail, which are organizing a walk on Sunday afternoon at 2 o'clock. The Dyke Trail, which starts over by Market Basket, and that's at 2 o'clock on Sunday. Wear sunscreen and bug spray. Yep. I'm a mom. I'm like, put on the darn sunscreen and bug spray. And then I will also be at that MMA conference on Saturday, so I'm looking forward to that. So I will miss the farmer's market, but I am making cupcakes for the bake sale.
Good.
So
I'll make sure to buy some.
I will doing my part. So that's it.
Very good. Rob?
Yeah, I just did want to just note about Memorial Day. Of course, we all go because we're, or most of us go. But I would say, folks who weren't there, if you're in town on that weekend, that's really a great thing to attend. And it's really, every time I go there, kind of gives you a little different perspective. And I think it's important. And so I would just urge people who haven't, gone there and done it, that it's a great thing. It's 10:30 on Monday, and very easy to attend and go to. So I would say
It's
that.
all downhill.
Yeah, I'm not saying they have to go into March, but and I just had a few. And I wanted to ask Mike, where are we with the recycling contract? Like, what's going on with that?
It's going. Well, if you remember at town meeting, we actually increased the appropriation a bit to cover the recycling costs. But that's part of our waste management contract. I believe that ends in 2022 or 2023.
So it's really, I think the reason I bring it up is because with all these changes, I just want to look at ways we can, with the challenges of recycling and the way the market's changing, and the interest in the sustainability committee in dealing with some of these waste issues, that if we get an opportunity to review how we're doing our recycling and making changes to it, I think that'd be a great process to have people participate in and kind of look at how we can change that and what we can accomplish as part of that. So
I think important. So hopefully we'll have a sustainability coordinator by the end of the summer as part of this.
That's right. Yeah.
And one of the things that person needs to be looking at is also things like composting, and certainly trash and recycling is going to be very, very important. So, and I think we want to look at our trash program holistically, including recycling. And making maybe some changes to that.
Good. So that's something to keep a focus on. I'd like to hear about that. Good. So I went through my mail as outgoing chair, and so people.
You just did it?
Yes.
You must have had a stack?
No, recent mail. So I went through this. I really should share these things with people because I'm not sure they got shared, and I don't want things getting sent to me as. So this is a letter from the Boston Athletic Association thanking us for all our efforts in the marathon. So I wanted to make sure that I got that out because they sent it to me, and I'm presuming we all know they thanked us. But it was nice to get that letter, so I'll pass that around. The other thing, this one is the Foundation for Metro West. So I didn't know, Jen, if you guys get involved with them much, because this was addressed to me, so I wanted to make sure you guys heard about it too. Yeah, the Foundation for Metro West, which is like, yes, the survey. So that's what I was going to get to. Like, they talk about a survey and about focus groups. I'll just, so are you guys linked in with them? Is this something worth? I know they hand out certain amount of funding and we can apply and be involved in the survey, and I'm presuming our social workers work with them closely. And so, all right, so I just pass this around. It's they talk about a community-wide survey distribution. It was available on May 13th. So goes back to that. And then they talk about attending a focus group session, and so they seem like, I know of them a bit, and so it's important, just we're well connected with them, and you know, just,
They do a lot with our schools. I think they
Yeah.
do something with decisions at every day. At
do they?
every turn.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah,
that's,
within those.
yeah.
So that's good to keep it in
Yeah,
line with
good.
them and get involved in that survey. So, that's all I had,
That's great.
Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Rob. Mr. Joe?
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chair. There's a few things. Again, I just wanted to thank everybody for supporting me and re-electing me for my 4th term. There are some things that I just wanted to bring about. Again, we talked about the Memorial Day services, and I thought Captain Brett Walker's speech was very, very inspirational.
Yeah.
And, you know, he was asking people to, you know, do the dialogue with people that have been there. Well, unfortunately, in my case, the folks that were part of that dialogue are no longer alive, and, you know, so part of my journey that day is to go up to visit them and, you know, at the cemeteries, but thank them for their services as well. But I appreciated Brett's words. They were very inspirational. I would like to congratulate, we have a family in town that, they're like the Canes, and it's the Irusis. Mary Ann and Ozzie Irusi just celebrated their 70th wedding anniversary.
Wow.
That is just totally, it's just incredible. And the more I think about it, it's just like,
This was good.
when do you see people like that, you know?
Yeah.
And they're still very vibrant in town, and,
Yep.
you know, they're always walking around, but they're always together. Always together, which is just amazing. And so congratulations to them, and may they enjoy
Yes,
another
happy
70
anniversary.
happy anniversary. And lastly, I would like to give my condolences to the Duca family. Sam Duca was the dad, and I will tell you, my first contact with Sam, I sat on his lap when he was Santa Claus. And I have to tell you, it had to be inspiring, because it wasn't too far later that, you know, as I got older, Sam couldn't do it anymore, and he said, "How about you?" And so I took the
That's a good
torch.
story.
Oh, that's
So
something,
God
yeah.
bless him, you know, and he was the first one in in Ashland anyway, to sign a professional football contract. He played for the New York Giants. I mean, Redskins, I'm sorry, at the time. So, and it was incredible. He got $550 a week, plus room and board. Back then, in 1954, that was a lot of money. It was a ton of money. But they only played like 8 games, so, you know, there wasn't a lot of, it wasn't a
good
big season
story.
like today. But God bless them, and my condolences to Mike and Anthony and their families as well, so.
Yeah, that's great.
Thank you for extending
So
that.
that's it.
I
That's
just
all I
want to point out, Joe, that, you know, again, congratulations on your 4th term, but you still have a long way to go to catch Arnold Baker.
I have no intentions of trying to catch up Arnold Baker. My
How
God,
many
no.
years did Arnold Baker do?
Oh,
No
my God.
idea. He's all over those plaques.
Oh, my word, no.
I served with Arnold Baker.
Wow.
Did you really?
Yes. He actually died in office.
You already did.
Oh, that's right.
That's right, he did.
Interesting.
Yeah.
All right, Yolanda?
Thank you.
So I want to thank Joe for representing the Select Board at graduation. Thank you for doing that, and a congratulations out to the class of 2019. I attended the MAPC annual meeting. I am the Ashland representative to the MAPC, and I was just elected to my 2nd term on their executive board.
Nice.
So I sit at the
Congratulations.
executive board and give feedback on regards to our
Great.
community. That was interesting, at their annual meeting, they started talking about the 2020 census and how important it is, and they will be looking for communities to create census count committees, and they'll be looking for us to work with them. So it's something that, I don't know how you want me to do, but I'd like to, you know, work with Tara and create something, because they're saying it's very important that we get an accurate count.
It is. I mean, it's very, very important to get an accurate count, because that factors into things like federal aid, state aid.
Yeah.
things of that
Yep.
nature.
That's
So that
great.
was it was great. They had about four people talking about it from different levels, which was very interesting. Then just yesterday, I was in Worcester for an MMA policy committee meeting. Again, this is one of those things that I, through MMA as a member of our Board of Selectmen, and I'm in my 2nd term there, and it's a 2-year appointment. And they were talking about, we had one of the 5 commissioners from the Cannabis Control Commission speaking to us about how they're talking about the social
consumption laws and procedures that they're putting in place. So those will be coming out sometime toward the end of June, and they'll be looking for public comment. So as those come out, I will remind everybody to look at them and give their comments. The thing with social consumption is that nothing can be passed from their level until it is passed at the state level. Because right now, how the marijuana laws are written, there's no social consumption allowed, meaning you can't go and have, sit at Stone Park and smoke legally. I mean, you can, but there's no real comments, or there's no policies for that. And they're looking to look at one-day licenses. Do they treat it like liquor, where the organization might have a state license, but do they then have to come to the town? So those will be coming out. They also talked about distribution and the fact that they're looking at policies and rules and regulations for the distribution to home distribution. And one of the comments that they brought up was, currently what they're looking at is, if you as a community have voted to not allow retail marijuana, the current regulations is looking at then not allowing delivery into your community. And I vocalized, and I will be writing to them, that I don't think that's appropriate in that. And again, this is just my opinion. I did not do it representing the board. But my feeling is, if they want to deliver it to our community, just because we don't have it as a retail in our community, I don't think that's appropriate. So again, that'll be coming out, and I was looking forward that to people as well, to put their feedback.
And that was also one of the rationale when people didn't support the dispensary. One of the things that the people who didn't want it said, well, you can always just mail away for it anyway. So this would even go against that rationale.
It's the same post office that delivers our excise tax.
Right. They're smoking it.
We don't have to worry.
And then, just two more things. So on Sunday at the outdoor YMCA is the Metro West K-9 Fun Run. You can still register, either just by yourself, or the Ashland Dog Park Committee has, if you want to spend some extra, you can become part of Team Ashland Bark Park. So we'll be there selling T-shirts and information and magnets and stuff like that. And then the last thing is, as Steve talked about earlier, there is the 4-way stop sign at Prospect and Elliott. It has been interesting. I think we need to ask our police to do a refresher on how to handle a 4-way stop sign. Because the number of people that either, one, sit there too long because they're on Elliott Street and they see someone come from Prospect and think because they're coming from Prospect, they have the right of way, versus if you get to the stop line first, you have the right of way. If two people come, let's say one person comes from Elliott and the other one is coming on Prospect, let's say you're heading toward Holliston and you're coming from Shaw's, the person to the right has the right of way. If you're facing each other, so let's say there are two people coming on Prospect Street and you hit the stop sign at the same time, the person taking the right onto Elliott versus the person taking the left onto Elliott. So I almost feel like we need to get a refresher on how to handle a 4-way stop sign. I know some people have posted some stuff, and I did a little, I did a part of it on my Around the Clock with Sergeant Berman.
WACA would
We
be a
did
pretty good
do
way of doing
something,
that.
but we need to get more out there because
Maybe we should do it right at that location and
because
just
it's
show
amazing.
people that's what you need
And
to
there's
do.
still people who,
Right.
they're coming down Prospect Street, they see the stop sign, they sort of slow down, but because they don't see other cars, they're still going through it, so. Anyway, that was all I had. Thank you.
Thank you. So I just want to point out, just regarding the K-9 5K, Otis is registered.
All right.
So Otis.
Yeah, but apparently he's not training
He's not
as much as
trained,
you
yeah.
think.
Otis' training regimen is, as I stated, basking in the sun and chasing his tail.
Does this mean his owner
And-
goes
nothing wrong with
5K?
And, but
Steve,
as,
it'll take you 6 years to complete the 5K, right?
but as Otis says, a day with his dad is a good day.
There
right?
you go.
That's right.
He's good.
He's excited.
So, a couple of things on my list. I have kind of board administrative things in terms of, we talk, every year we talk about having boards and committees come to give a report. We're gonna start that. We're gonna stay on. Now, first one is gonna be the Upper Charles Trail, second one is gonna be open space. We're due for town forest, since the town forest committee is represented here. But we'll go through them. And we don't need anything elaborate. We just want to get an update as to, because some of the committees are pretty active.
Yeah, they're doing a lot.
And, right, so we're gonna continue to do on that. Another thing, we're gonna work on is expanding the descriptions on the agendas. So there's a fuller description, so people, we've had some comments from residents that our descriptions aren't really good representations of what we're talking about. So we're gonna
Legitimate.
work on expanding that. We're appropriate. We won't have to do it for everyone, but
Right.
that's one of the things we want to achieve. And then the update our 2009 board policies and procedures documents. So that'll take a few meetings to get through. So I want to couple things regarding business that we conducted a year and a half ago. Michael and I went into the State House to have a meeting with Mass DOT, the MBTA. This was held in at that time, Senator Spilka's office. And that was a year and a half ago.
Yeah.
And we were invited back again last week for a follow-up meeting after a year and a half. And I'll let Michael reflect on this as well, but I thought it was a productive meeting. They are gonna be looking at, more seriously looking at our train station and looking at doing some potential upgrades and fixes and so on. The structure that we all complain about is probably not gonna happen immediately, but they're gonna be looking at that. Now, the best part about it was now we're not meeting in the senator's office, we're meeting in the Senate President's office.
There's a little more
And of course,
clout
she
there.
came in at a very timely time, and these guys, it was two gentlemen and a woman, and, it was a whole different conversation, I think, at that point, so.
Yeah, it became like it would be nice to, okay, it will happen, so.
So, that was a good thing. So, we'll updates to follow.
What is it they're thinking about doing?
Well, they have, number one, they have maintenance contracts with subcontractors that aren't necessarily being monitored, so the maintenance is very spotty. They talk about having an advertising program with all that kind of
do
stuff.
that,
They're talking about improving the lighting along the platform, but we're looking for better lighting in the parking lot as well. So, so those kinds of things. So they're looking at a few of our, reasonable to say, I think, reasonable asks on our part.
So just better maintenance and improving,
Some
maybe
shorter
working
term
on the rust.
projects and
Yeah.
maintenance, and then also the larger project, which is the platform
The
in reconstruction.
Reconstructing the
Part
plant.
of the original, or some of the original discussion where it got you guys into the State House was, we looked at what Framingham did with the MWRTA
Yeah.
and the work that they've done, and then they took over the station.
Yeah.
Is that still part of the discussion? Is Ed Carr at the table, or
No.
is that sort of off the table?
So it's kind of half on the table in the sense of what we talked about was not using that model.
Okay,
Because that was they were pretty clear that was something that they were not interested in
Okay.
pursuing.
okay.
But we did talk about revenue sharing
Yeah.
as a potential for
That's
the
big.
town to,
Oh, my
Right.
goodness.
to do some of the maintenance on
Okay.
our end.
Yeah.
So it's,
Discussion
after
is
a year and a
happening.
half, I mean, it was good to have, and I think it was, obviously, timing was good as well, so.
Good.
All right, so
Thank you
that
for that.
went well, yep. I don't know if anybody has seen this article in the Globe from the other day. It's called, it was yesterday, "Study Highlights Local Rules That Block New Housing in Greater Boston." And it's a very, very interesting article. There was a group of real estate agents and developers and actually affordable housing advocates commissioned a report by the Massachusetts Smart Growth Alliance. And they talked about the fact that every town, every community, locally controls their zoning. There's no kind of regional zoning component as well. You know, I guess for me, reading this article, I mean, there's a lot of just conflicting thoughts about it, because one hand, I get the fact that maybe we should do a better job of regional discussions with, let's say, Holliston or Framingham, given the traffic we recognize as a regional problem. At the other hand, do we want to have our zoning superseded by, let's say, state regulation? Do we want to see that happen? Personally, I don't. But, it's all tied to, I think, Governor Baker's initiative for increasing housing.
Yeah.
And increasing not just affordable housing, but housing in general. And but very interesting. If you get a chance, look it up online. It's
Did the article talk at all about the governor's proposal to change how zoning votes?
yeah, the threshold.
Okay, the threshold, okay.
Yeah, so it would be 50% plus one
Versus
versus
two-thirds.
two-thirds, right. So
That's what's that, so I'm glad you brought that up, because I had a conversation with Representative Lewis a couple weeks ago.
yeah,
And I basically asked his opinion on the governor's proposal, and as you know, we talked about this last year and didn't take any action.
Yeah.
And I just said, we're all supportive of housing, but we're also supportive of local control. What you're thinking on the governor's, he seemed, he was in favor of this, that, or something like it, but he also thought that it wouldn't, the chances for its passages, he was skeptical about it being passed. And so I guess that, I think we need to think, if we're supportive of housing or affordable housing, how this might fit into that, how this and other measures, and if we're gonna get more active. And I don't know, I'm presuming the MMA has come out in favor of this. They did last year. I don't know, does anybody know?
I believe they did.
Yeah, I
Last year,
believe
there
so
were
too.
dueling housing bills.
Yeah, and this year there are more dueling housing bills, I guess, because the Democrats want this plus some other things, and I'm not up on all the
but
details.
this continues to be, I think, it's a continuous flashpoint for,
Yeah.
Certainly for our community, and I think for every community, as to how we talked about it tonight several times, about whether it was, the UGC proposal or,
Yeah.
whatever. I mean, I think it's, this is probably our biggest challenge as a board to,
Yeah.
manage
Well, it's
this.
interesting to think about this UGC proposal, because one of their concerns was, we'll never get two-thirds for a zoning change, at
That's
town
right.
meeting.
So we'll
But
go
if
the
it-
40B route is what
Right,
their
but if
premise
it was
right?
50%, maybe it wouldn't be so,
Right.
so it's a
Yeah.
kind of an interesting.
Well, if
thing
they
about
did
that.
the right project, I think they could get two-thirds majority.
Yeah. So, again,
Yeah.
I encourage you to check this out, and also check out the report.
Where's that, Steve? I'm sorry.
This
where's
is
that?
from the Globe,
Oh.
and there's a link in the article to get to the actual report,
What
which is,
was, that was yesterday's?
this is yesterday's Globe, it was
Okay.
in yesterday, so that's that.
Thanks.
Farmers Market, Saturday, the 8th, 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. at 125 Front Street, opening day, typically our biggest day, and our traditional opening day band, the Railroad House Band, will be performing. So we expect weather to be perfect, and should be a great day. And then lastly, I just want to extend condolences to the Rivers family. Ann Rivers passed away several days ago. Ann and Bob lived in town for many years, and you'd probably recognize Ann and Bob for working at the polls. They were regulars working at the elections. So just want to extend condolences to the Rivers family. So that's my report. Again, congratulations on your reelection.
Thank you, sir.
And congratulations on your election.
Thank you.
And, it's awesome that we have, we've made a lot of changes today, some through election and some through a vote. So it
Yep.
was,
I just want people to be clear, because sometimes they when they read the papers or whatever, it's just, it wasn't that I was against the name change. I was just against that last amendment that you wanted to be
Yep.
put in there. But I had no problem with the name change.
Yep.
I had no problem with that. I just want people to understand that. So,
Fair enough.
because I'm sure that I'll hear it tomorrow. Oh, you weren't in favor of it. No, that wasn't it at all. You weren't paying attention.
It's gonna be on
All right.
Facebook, so you-
It'll be, it's
Yeah,
on
of course it
Facebook,
is.
right, yeah.
So our next meeting is Wednesday, June the 19th,
Yep.
7 PM here in the Arnold Baker, I think, Select Board Room. I think
I
that's
believe it is
right.
called that.
And yes, I believe it is. So I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second. I was
All
waiting
those-
for Brandy to say second.
Beat me to it. I'm slow, it's late.
It's okay. Yeah, it
All
is.
those in favor?
Aye.